gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Hi, Andrew Pierce here. Join me every Friday lunchtime for a proper no-nonsense debrief of the week's events. With special guests in the studio and the GB News team on the ground, I'll be getting you up to date with news, some intelligent discussion, and my own sharp take. The weekend starts here with me every Friday lunchtime on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every weekend, it's Mark Dolan Tonight. Bigger and better, starting at 8 p.m. Friday and Saturday.
Can't be too safe. Bring it on. Has there ever been a more innuendo feature?
And Sundays, we're on at 9.
It's ridiculous.
Just get on with it. Maybe you should get a proper job.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
It's 8 o'clock and this is Mark Dolan Tonight. 3 hours of big opinion, big guests, big stories and big entertainment. We've got the Sunday papers with full panel reaction. The Queen of Showbiz, Kinsey Schofield, live from Los Angeles. And I'll take a look back at the week in Dolan's diary. Plus, my take at 10 and so much more. But we start, as always, with the People's Hour, in which I'm taking your video calls. Tonight, we'll be debating: can the Tories save the economy? Is gambling overly criticised? Are the police still keeping us safe? And for a bit of fun, is it wrong to go on holiday without your kids? Lots to get through, but first the headlines with Ray Addison.
Thanks, Mark. Here's the latest from the GB newsroom. 276 Flybe staff have been made redundant, with the airline going into administration for the second time in 3 years. Around 75,000 holidaymakers have now had their bookings cancelled. Flybe returned to the skies last April after collapsing in 2020. They are operating flights to 17 destinations. The head of the RMT union says its members will decide by the 8th of February whether to accept the latest and final pay offer from the rail delivery group. Mick Lynch says discussions will be held with members across the country over the next 10 days. However, he told GB News he does not feel optimistic.
What we've got is a really poor offer. The pay offer is below less than half of the rate of inflation over these 2 years. Inflation is running over 22-23% in the retail price index. This is 9% over 2 years, and we had no offer for 3 years before that. So our people are getting poorer, and at the same time their conditions and their working lives are being trampled all over. So I'm quite suspicious about what's going on, and I don't know if our members would be prepared to accept it.
Graphic body cam footage has been released in the United States showing police in Memphis beating a black man who died 3 days later. Now, a warning, some people may find the following footage distressing.
Mom! Mom! Give your hands!
29-year-old Tyree Nichols was kicked, punched and pepper sprayed as he cried out for his mother. 5 black officers have been sacked and are now facing murder charges. Tennessee State Representative G.A. Hardaway says we need improved police vetting.
These are folks who we are giving permission at their discretion to take your liberty or your life. We've got to do a better job of deciding who has that authority.
And staying in the US, and former President Donald Trump has relaunched his campaign for re-election in 2024.
They said he's not doing rallies, he's not campaigning. Maybe he's lost that step. I'm more angry now, and I'm more committed now than I ever was, because...
Mr. Trump there speaking at a Republican event in New Hampshire in his first campaign speech. Several party members deciding not to attend or claiming to have scheduling conflicts. Mr. Trump's next stop will be in South Carolina, which is also seen as a kingmaker state. Tributes have been paid to Claire Drakeford, the wife of Welsh First Minister Mark Drakeford, who died suddenly this afternoon. The Prime Minister is among those to pass on his heartfelt condolences to Mr Drakeford and his family. The Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, and the Prince and Princess of Wales said they too were sending their thoughts and prayers during this difficult time. On TV, online and on DAB+ radio, this is GB News. Back now to Mark Dolan Tonight.
Nice to have Ray Addison back. He returns in an hour's time. Welcome to Mark Dolan Tonight. We start this evening with the People's Hour, in which I'll be taking your video calls on the big stories of the day. Tonight, the stars of the show are Robin in St Albans, Addick in Kent, Susan in Carmarthenshire, Lars in Windsor, Fergus in Greenwich, and last but not least, she hasn't lost her marbles, Michaela in Elgin. Now, lots from them over the course of the next hour. The topics we will be debating: can the Tories save the economy? Is gambling overly criticised? Are the police still keeping us safe? And for a bit of fun, is it wrong to go on holiday without your kids? My Saturday sidekick for the first hour of the show is the international security expert Will Geddes. Can't wait for his contribution. I'll be honest, I feel safer just having him sat here next to me. Also tonight, in the big question after 9, should smacking your child be a criminal offence across the whole of the UK? We'll hear from both sides on that one. We're heading to Hollywood, California to get the views of the Queen of US showbiz royal and political reporting, Kinsey Schofield. Is Prince Andrew making a comeback? Is there a return, potentially, to public life for the Duke of York? Plus tomorrow's Sunday Papers from 10:20. That's 10 minutes earlier than everyone else. Tonight in the company of the brilliant political editor of the Sunday Mirror, Nigel Nelson. So this is Mark Dolan Tonight. It's Saturday, so why not put something cold and fizzy in the fridge or fire up the kettle, and let's make a night of it. And let's kick off with a warm hello to security expert Will Geddes. Hi, Will, how are you?
Hello, Mark. I'm really well. Thank you very much for the invite tonight.
You're looking very chic. That does not look like a machine washable jacket.
No, machine washable could be a little reckless. You know, I like my risks, but, you know, you have to measure them, Mark.
Yeah, too right. Well, let's talk about risk, because the likes of ISIS have been mercifully quiet, at least in this country, but the threat hasn't gone away.
No, unfortunately not. And this is one of the challenges for the security services and the police. They constantly have to remind the general public to be vigilant, because when we bear in mind general public's contribution in terms of witnessing or observing or seeing any kind of suspicious activity and reporting it through to the counter-terrorism hotline is actually very important. But at the same time, there's got to be a balance, not to terrify everybody, and to use those threat levels, of which we are at substantial, which is just basic level. At the moment, it means that threat is likely, but it's not imminent. in an effective and useful way. If it stays at the same level for too long and it doesn't adjust, then it can lose its power.
Why have the terrorists been mercifully quiet in the last few months? Is it the lockdowns? Is it the pandemic? What's happened, do you think? Or is it better counter-terrorism?
I think it's actually the latter, Mark, to be honest. I think, certainly from colleagues and contacts of mine, they've been doing an amazing job of intercepting at a very, very early stage some of the possible threats or plots that are being sort of formulated. And inevitably, there are going to be plots that are foiled that don't come to public eye and public notice and you won't see in the newspapers. So I know those guys are working incredibly hard behind the scenes. It means the threat continues. And bearing in mind, it's not just Islamic extremism, it isn't just ISIS or Al-Qaeda, there is far-right extremism, and we've seen quite a bit of that, certainly in continental Europe of late.
And they'll be keeping you busy, sadly, for many years to come. Well, we're going to keep you busy tonight because I want your opinions across a range of big topics of the day. And let's, of course, kick off with our first topic. And this is all about the economy. The Chancellor of the Exchequer, Jeremy Hunt, made his first big speech of 2023 yesterday. And he laid out the roadmap he believes will lead to a booming economy. We won't hold our breath. Hunt believes the UK can capitalise on what he describes as Brexit freedoms en route to economic growth. And he has vowed once again to cut inflation, describing it as the best tax cut at the moment. Tory MPs broadly welcomed the plan, but some business leaders have said it was lacking in detail. So can the Tories shore up our economy and bounce back and potentially win the next election? Let's speak to Fergus, who is in Greenwich. Hello, Fergus.
Hello there, Mark. Lovely to be on here again.
Great to have you back on the programme. Is Jeremy Hunt a good Chancellor?
Is the Joker a great Joker in Batman? I don't know. He smiles a lot, doesn't he? Some of his stuff is really good. But doing the 4 E's, it's like the 3 yeses. It's a bit corny, the 4 E's. And I was thinking, because I've been thinking about this all day, well, we all do all the time, basically, the economy. It's like businesses create the economy. Governments either help it or resist it. And that's stage one. Yes, he can help his government. Yes, he can help the country, or he can damage it. And like some of the points he made, like... it's for enterprise, education, employment, everywhere. Wonderful titles. What does that really mean? I would say we need faster broadband, renewables faster, but hang on, the renewables is a bit wishy-washy. Electric cars are not all that wonderful. And there's lots of coal, there's lots of oil, there's lots of gas we're not using because of the CO2 zero thing, which I won't even go in. But it's just damaging the world at the moment. And yes, he can. Of course he can. But the other thing, Mark, is getting the people in their 50s back to work. I know several people in their 50s, some of whom have left work, some have gone back to work. But I was talking to several of them, and it's like, well, why would I? I've worked for so many years, and these young people in the office treat me like rubbish. I'm 53, 55, like B&Q. B&Q are fabulous. They make everything work. You go in B&Q, you speak to an older person, say, how can I buy this widget, this screwdriver, this screw? Wow, you want that one. You don't want that one, you want this one. But getting the people in their 50s back into an office, the people in their 20s ignore them. Oh, it's an old person. It's an old person. We don't want to work with them. And the older people have got so much value in the economy, but you've got to persuade them to come back. And it would be brilliant if you could, like huge tax reliefs. Otherwise, why would they bother to come back? They're exhausted.
Yes, I think you're right. You've got to incentivise and perhaps change the work culture and attitudes towards the over 50s in the workplace. I tend to agree with you on that one, Fergus. Let's bring Will in on this. Will, what do you think about Jeremy Hunt? Do you think he has settled the nerves of the international bond markets? What's your appraisal of his short tenure at number 11?
Well, my feeling, particularly on Jeremy Hunt, is, again, it's typical sort of political rhetoric. It doesn't have any particular substance. It's not broken down into anything granular. And I think, really, the general public and the voting electorate, if you like, are kind of sick to death of the fact that they haven't actually been given any kind of tangible action plan or strategy. I mean, it's the same way as if I walked in to resolve a problem for a client and I said, don't worry, we'll just get it fixed. They're going to want to know how it is going to be fixed in a granular way in each step along the path. And I think to come out with these lovely, catchy terms, certainly your other guest was saying, you know, everything, everywhere, all at once, I think that's up for an Oscar anyway. It doesn't really tell us a great deal about actually how it's going to be implemented. So, you know, my concerns are come forward with definitive action plans, measuring points, and really look at exactly where it's going to be going and within what time. And I think that's the other thing. Again, it's always a case of each government, when they come in, they're adopting or blaming the previous government for basically the hurdles that have been put in place. So, you know, take some ownership, take some responsibility, and show why you should be voted in again at the next general election.
Fergus will stay there. Let's speak to Lars now. Lars is in Windsor. And Lars, to coin that a phrase in relation to the US elections, is it the economy, stupid? Is that what will decide the outcome of the next election?
I think that will be one thing. The other thing will be how we deal with the cost of living, how we deal with the energy crisis, small business. I believe, you know, small business are the backbone of the economy in reality, and the previous Chancellor and the current Chancellor haven't been that favourable on the tax incentives for small businesses. Bear in mind that small businesses and business owners take a lot of risk, and they're not getting much of the benefit. What with the corporation tax going up to 25%, I agree with Will. Basically, the Chancellor has created a destination without a journey. So
however, if sorry to interrupt you, Lars, if he halves inflation, that will go a long way to restoring economic confidence, won't it?
It will, but you can't expect it. You can't use inflation to say that's a tax cut, because all you're doing is reducing the increases in the costs to the people. It's not a tax cut in reality. You know, if they could cut things like corporation tax slightly, then that would be a tax cut. And if you cut corporation tax for businesses, then you're giving them more money to invest to be able to employ more people that in reality are going to pay more tax via their PAYE and their national insurance.
Okay,
so well, let's
circle. Let's keep Lars in the picture. Let's bring Will and Fergus back into the conversation as well, if we can. But Will, just briefly on the politics of this. I mean, you mentioned these sort of glib slogans that Jeremy Hunt is clearly a fan of. He's a good communicator, a polished political operator. But if the Tories get the election right, would you share my view that actually shares in Rishi Sunak are currently a little low and shares in Keir Starmer are a little high?
I don't know necessarily. I mean, I think certainly the shares in Rishi Sunak may be low or valued as low right now, because I think he hasn't really demonstrated what we hoped. You know, being an economist, being someone who is worked in the financial sectors and understands the mechanics of the economy. I think he's got to come forward with more definitive plans. I think his envoy in Jeremy Hunt isn't a fantastically reassuring one. I definitely agree with many of the points that Lars was making. Corporation tax is crippling for many, many companies. And again, it's not helping them to reinvigorate the workforce or increase their workforce by taking future employees on. So, you know, I think Rishi, again, you know, I don't want to repeat everything that I was just saying a little earlier, but I think, you know, it is about saying what are we actually going to do and how are we going to do it, rather than these fantastic end results, which none of us, I think, feel confident will actually be achieved.
OK, Fergus, briefly, if you can. We know about inflation. The target is to halve it this year. What about taxes? Should they come down?
Yeah, they definitely should, because as two people have just said, Will and Lars, if you incentivise people to do stuff, if you don't, they won't. It's that simple. Who was it? Was it Alexander Pope or someone like that said, man is seldom so gainfully employed as when in the pursuit of money. Basically, it sounds horrible, but it's true. If you get a gain from something, you will do it. If you don't, why would you?
Amen to that. Words of wisdom. Fergus for Chancellor. Plenty more to come tonight in the People's Hour, including Are the police still keeping Britain safe? And is it wrong to go on holiday without your kids? Have you done it? Did you feel bad? Or did you have the time of your life? But next on the People's Hour, is gambling overly criticised? See you shortly.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison? I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on. He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
He's the king of breakfast TV, and he's back.
Eamon Holmes, back on the TV with me this morning.
Even remember my name.
I know, it's been 4 months. You have holy water by your bed?
Oh, yes. Already to bless.
Yeah. Oh, Eamon. Oh.
Why do you not believe anything I say?
Eamon Holmes back on GB News Breakfast at 6 a.m.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you. GB News will always stay honest, balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind, and we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you. Britain's watching.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236. And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the People's Hour with me, Mark Dolan. Dolan's Diary and my Take at 10 still to come, plus tomorrow's papers and my all-star panel. But let's crack on now with our next debate in the company of my Saturday sidekick, security expert, broadcaster and presenter, Will Geddes. Now, according to a report in the Daily Mail, the BBC are thinking of dropping the horse racing tips from the Today Show on Radio 4. The tips have been part of the much-loved programme for 46 years, and losing them would undoubtedly spark protests. But is the move part of a society-wide disillusionment with any kind of gambling? Is that justified? The suffering caused by gambling addiction cannot be denied and must be tackled, of course. But is there much wrong with non-addicts sticking a £5 on the Grand National or a £1 on the lottery? Actually, I think it's £2 now. Let's head to St Albans and ask Robin what he thinks. Hi, Robin.
Hi, good evening, Mark. Good to see you.
Good to see you, Robin. Now, are we a bit like alcohol? Are we tarring everyone with the same brush? Most people can have a pint or two and have a happy life. Then you have alcoholics. Do we have the same judgment about gambling?
Yeah, I think we do, yes. And you're absolutely right. I think that it's freedom of choice. We should be given the choice to gamble. having said that, in my early life, 2 of my early jobs, one, I worked as a roulette dealer in a casino, and I also worked in a bookies as a settler. So I've seen people come in and lose everything, and I've seen a real desperation. Certainly, when I was working at the bookies, it happened to be a bookmakers in a car plant, and on a Thursday, the workers would come in with their wages, and they would lose them. They'd lose their week's wages, and the guys behind the counter were protected by wire fences, where I was actually out on the floor writing up the odds on the boards. But it was desperate, and the truth is, the casinos, they win, right? You're not going to win. You might have an evening where, if you can afford to, if I go and do it, I would say I'll risk £100 maybe on blackjack. If I double it, I stop. If I lose it, I go, okay, well, I've had an hour's entertainment. And I'm able to do that, but many people are not able to do that. And that is one of the big issues, is that the desperation of people that chase, scratch cards because they think they're going to win enough money to put food on their tables at weekends, or during the week. So it's a difficult industry.
Indeed so, and no doubt there are tragic cases. But I wonder whether, Robin, a lot of these people would get in trouble anyway, because if they weren't at the bookmakers, they'd be online, possibly using an app on their phone or in a casino. What about those people that switch on the Today programme on Radio 4 and enjoy their racing tips? They look at the form, they look at the history of the race, the history of the jockey and the horse, or even they choose their favourite colour, and they just put £3 on something once a week. Harmless fun, surely.
Oh, no, absolutely. And I think that would be a nonsense to get rid of that. I mean, I like to go horse racing every now and again. And again, it comes back down to, I get a few tips. I have a friend who supposedly, has the knowledge, and sometimes we win and sometimes we lose. I don't believe you can stop people gambling if they want to, because they'll do it illegally. They'll play poker, as you say, they'll go to casinos, they'll go online. They'll bet on, 2 flies on a window screen. So people will always risk their money, because at the end of the day, you get a great buzz from it. I mean, when you're in a casino and you're playing and you're winning 1 or 2 hands and the money's coming back your way, it's a great buzz. I understand 100% why people do it. I think the industry, though, needs to probably invest more money in the rehab side of it and help people who are addicted. Because for the people who are addicted, it's pretty awful. But for the rest of us who just want to put a punt on £5, as you say, on the Grand National and bet on 100 to 1 outsider and, hopefully win. Or if we don't win, we don't really care because it was only a £5.
Indeed so. And my brilliant producer, Mark, has already worked out a couple of websites and numbers where people can get help. We'll read those out in just a moment. But let's speak to Will Geddes about this, because Will, the BBC's brilliant racing correspondent, Cornelius Lycett, has been quoted as saying that this is another kick in the teeth to the racing industry. And racing is a great British tradition and a wonderful sport and a fabulous occasion.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure how much more I can add to what both yourself and Robin have said. Gambling has been around since, year 1 or year 0, if you want, and people will do it. Some people are, appealed by it and they find it an enjoyable hobby. And inevitably, there are those that unfortunately fall down the rabbit hole and end up as addicts to it. I think in terms of taking away this tip section on the Today programme, does it make any difference? I think it's unnecessary. I mean, when you look at a lot of the advertisements which are on terrestrial TV, not just on satellite and cable, there's a lot for various online betting companies, which, to be honest, there are apps you can put onto your phone. The tip, section on the Today programme, is that really going to make any more difference? No, I think we need to look at the advertising. And I think the point that Robin made, which I think was particularly valid, is that as we go into this cost of living crisis, people are going to take that gamble, whether it be with a scratch card, the lottery, or walking into a casino and putting their life savings on black or red or whatever it might be to see if they could improve their own personal position. That is something that I do worry about, especially for those that are addicted already.
Let's speak to Adik in Kent, another good friend of the show and one of the many stars here in the People's Hour. And Adik, let me ask you, if the BBC, they've not confirmed this yet, but if they get rid of the racing tips on the Today programme, are they guilty of finger-wagging and moralising? Is this the nanny state in overdrive?
Hello, Mark. Thank you for inviting me again. You'll be surprised. I quite support what the BBC does. I cannot believe I'm saying that. To just expand what Robin and Will said, we need to realize what actually gambling is. And actually, ties a bit to what your monologue yesterday about drugs. Gambling is addictive. It's the same neurotransmitters, dopamine, serotonin, that you cannot get enough. And that's where you continue. In the UK, it's about a third of 1 million people are addicted gamblers. And these people, affecting each one of them, affect another 6 people from the family or from the surroundings, which mean 2 million people in the UK are affected directly because of a gambling problem. I was very surprised looking at statistics that 44% are gambling, including myself. I do fill up a lottery ticket, and the gambles lost is £14 billion a year. What is interesting from the H2 gambling capital report, Britain is the most gambling nation on earth. I could not believe what I just read in the report. Last year, up to 2021, the UK online gambling generated $10.3 billion. UK has 67 million population. You'll be surprised to hear that United States, which has 337 million population, the same online gambling is only 9.1 billion. We have a problem. And because of that reason, I think everyone has its own decision-making, fair enough. But we have, I think, specific problem in this country that need addressing much more than we thought so in the beginning. So I repeat again, I apologize, but I support the BBC in the decision. We need to have more guidelines about protecting the population, or as I would say, maybe creating a different culture of gambling to support communal projects, maybe entrepreneurs projects. You want to gamble who will be successful, so the money will come back to the community rather to the pocket of people who are ripping off. And just to another point, you'll probably be aware that the betting shops are 10 times higher in the impoverished areas of the UK than the posh areas. So as already Robin mentioned, the people who don't have enough money, who have affected by the cost of living crisis, will undoubtedly try to have more money just to put more food on the table, and they will gamble the little what they have. And hence, because there's so many opportunities on the area where they live 10 times higher than the posh areas, no doubt they're more tempting, and that's dangerous and disappointing. And hence an action, I feel, need to be made.
Well, Adik, you've made some really important points. You've balanced the debate, and you never have to apologise for disagreeing with me, because this programme is all about opinions. So do keep them coming, and let's bring Will into this. And also, can we please get lovely, splendid other caller Robin into the picture as well? I want to bring back Robin, keep Will. And let's have all my friends back in this. Now, a suggestion there, Will, from Adik, that we should actually clamp down on gambling, not just get rid of the racing tips on Radio 4, but possibly legislation to get people out of the habit of gambling?
Well, I think it's going to be incredibly difficult to do that. Attic made some very good points, and I don't want to diminish from those valuable points that he made, but certainly and statistically on many different countries around the world and those involved in gambling, using America at the moment, it'd still be early days because only recently have they enabled, obviously, online banking, which was a massive issue in the United States, which they didn't want to be afforded to the population of the United States, even though there were some that got round it. But I think we will see that growing. I think we all agree this is a significant problem, and it has to be controlled in some ways. I think one of my concerns is just the visibility. Not so much on the Today programme, but I think in advertisements and when these are broadcast. And I think sometimes first thing in the morning, you'll see these kind of broadcasts of advertisements for online banking. I won't mention any specific names, but that's around the same time that a lot of parents are getting their kids ready for school. And it's the times where kids are more likely to see them. So maybe these need to be after the watershed when, OK, you're limiting the demographic. But the fundamental problem, can we stop it? Can we, reduce it? There will always be those that are going to go out and find it in some shape or form.
Tell me about this, Robin. What is your view, your judgment, your verdict on quite wealthy ex-football managers and Hollywood actors even doing adverts for gambling companies?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, if you're going to promote gambling on television using celebrities, it sells. Celebrities sell. The point I wanted to make was what I learned from when I was working as a roulette dealer is that people do not understand what they're doing. So most people go to a casino and they really do not understand, and they are going to lose. And I wondered if there was some kind of weird form of education where people could be taught to, you're still going to lose, right? Because it's in favor of the casino, but maybe you might get a bit more enjoyment out of it and not lose as much. But some form of education would be really, really important.
An excellent idea. Robin, Attic and Will, a fascinating debate. If your gambling is causing problems for you or your loved ones and you'd like to stop, then support and treatment is readily available. I'll always say this on the programme. If you've got a problem, reach out because help is always there. Specifically when it comes to gambling, GamCare, that's GAMCARE, GamCare, offer free information, support and counselling for people who have problems with gambling in the UK. It runs the National Gambling Helpline and also offers face-to-face counselling. The helpline is free and open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You can call it on 0808 80 20 133. 0808 80 20 133. That is GamCare or the National Gambling Helpline. Still to come, Dolan's diary at 9 when I take a look back at my highlights from the last 7 days. We've got my take at 10 as well, a strong monologue, I'm not pulling my punches, plus my all-star panel and tomorrow's papers. Coming up later in the People's Hour, is it wrong to go on holiday without your kids? Have you done it? Did you have a brilliant time? But next, are the police still keeping us safe? See you shortly.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me. So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even some ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, Andrew Pierce here. Join me every Friday lunchtime for a proper no-nonsense debrief of the week's events. With special guests in the studio and the GB News team on the ground, I'll be getting you up to date with news, some intelligent discussion, and my own sharp take. The weekend starts here with me every Friday lunchtime on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every weekend, it's Mark Dolan Tonight. Bigger and better, starting at 8 p.m. Friday and Saturday.
Can't be too safe.
Bring it on!
Has there ever been a more innuendo feature?
And Sundays, we're on at 9.
It's ridiculous.
Just get on with it. Maybe you should get a proper job.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Welcome back to the People's Hour. Don't forget, we'll be going straight to Hollywood, California, and the Queen of US showbiz, royal and political reporting, Kinsey Schofield, with all the latest on Prince Andrew. Is he plotting a comeback? Plus, we've got Dolan's Diary, my look back at the week's big stories, and my Take at 10 monologue as well. I'll be reacting to the actor Alan Cumming handing back his OBE. But let's crack on now with the People's Hour, in which I take your video calls. And British police are failing because they have forgotten why they exist. Not my words, but those of the highly respected journalist Charles Moore in The Telegraph this week. Moore argues that faith in the police has dropped rapidly of late, citing the fact that many women now find it hard to trust them following the horrific crimes of Wayne Couzens and David Carrick. He also claims that some staff networks within the police are more concerned with what he describes as identitarian politics than the general well-being of the public. We know what he's talking about, woke culture. Well, he's far from the only person raising such concerns. So it's fair to say many have lost trust in the police. So are they still keeping us safe? Let's speak to Michaela in Elgin. Hi, Michaela.
Hello. Evening, Mark. Thank you for inviting me back. I think that, out of 30,000 Metropolitan Police officers, there are always bad eggs. If there were 30,000 of the public that you just rounded up, you'd always get bad eggs. Did we say when Harold Shipman, a doctor, did what he did, oh, we can't go to the doctors anymore, it's not safe? Or when doctors also, some of them touch people up. We don't say, oh, we're all in a panic, we're not going to go to doctors. So why do we do it for police? I think the police do a very hard job. For £21,000 a year outside of London, that's what they get paid. They're expected, if you sort of think about all the things they do, not just car accidents, but, terrorists, domestic, sexual offences, the list goes on and on and on. During the strikes, they've had to just step up to the plate and take the helm. And the biggest issue they have is mental health. People end up on the street. They don't call, the social work. They call an ambulance. Sometimes ambulance take hours. Who do they call? The police. You know, if you think the police are doing so much, and are they ever going to meet everybody's expectations? I don't think so. I think really they prioritise just like everybody else. They prioritise. If there's a big 20,000, car crash with 20 cars piled up and bodies everywhere, how can they send somebody out to a burglary? They don't have infinite resources. Yet public expectation is that, oh, why haven't they come to my burglary? They will come, but it might not, it's just not a priority right now. You've seen on the television these calling programs where they show you the calls queuing up for policemen, to come out and ambulances to come out. It's incredible. I do think that we don't really have enough good press for what the police do. You don't hear when they disarm people with guns or, I think it's all just, oh, there's this terrible person who's done this and, oh, we can't be safe anymore. When we don't say for plumbing, someone has a bad plumbing job. We can't trust plumbers anymore. And we've all had that, surely. I think it's exactly what you were talking about earlier with gambling, tarnishing people with a brush, when good police officers have to live in the shadow of this. Doctors don't have to live in the shadow of Dr. Shipman. They don't have to feel bad because of that, but all police officers are feeling bad. They are good police officers think it's abhorrent what's happened.
Well, it's interesting what you've said. You've spoken from the heart there, Michaela. Will Geddes, is Michaela right that a rotten apple does not make a rotten barrel?
She's absolutely right. I've got friends who are in the same unit that these two recent perpetrators, these two individuals that were responsible and alleged for, these horrific crimes. And they have thousands and thousands and thousands of officers that go through. And these are the two. Now, inevitably, Mark Rowley is doing a great job of trying to weed out others that shouldn't be in the job. And inevitably, in any profession, you're going to get a few wrong uns. But there are three things that I think, Mark, we've got to think about here. There is the police themselves, there's the Crown Prosecution Service, which can quite often be the group that actually the police get the responsibility for, because they're the ones that decide whether something should be prosecuted and should be taken to courts. And the third part is the sentencing guidelines. And again, the police can quite often be attributed the blame and responsibility that certain criminals will get out with very minor custodial sentences, or there'll be probationary, sentences. I think the police have been also the victim in the same regard as to this sort of prism of attention and focus that has also been drawn from social media, where it will highlight certain sort of failings on their part or by certain officers, and by the media as well, where it will blow it certainly into the sightline of most of the general public. I think it's a question of perspective having been lost. But overall, and this is the point Michaela made, which I think is incredibly valid, is the limited resource. Theresa May is still responsible for chopping some 20,000 police officers. And as a direct result, the catch-up is not as simple as, let's get the grow bag out, let's get a bunch of new police officers, and they're up and operational within 6 months. It can take an awfully long time to get them trained, get them ready, get them actually on the streets, and get them experienced.
Absolutely. You must never cut corners with crime. And I do think that our safety was one of the casualties of austerity going back to 2010. Let's speak to Susan in Carmarthenshire. Hi, Susan. Great to have you on the show. We wanted to connect with you a couple of weeks ago, and we have finally achieved our goal. Do you feel protected by the British police?
If you'd have asked me that a few years ago, I would have said a definite yes. But to be quite honest with you, Mark, I can't remember the last time I saw a policeman. I see the odd police car if I'm going into town, but I've had no reason to connect with the police, and I certainly don't see anywhere I live. And I think that could be a problem why people don't feel safe is because we don't see them anymore. I can go back to my younger days, and we had a bobby on the beat, and we had the community police, and the community police, they knew everyone. Everyone in the community knew the bobbies. And if little Jimmy was a naughty boy, the policeman would go knocking on the door and tell his parents, and then he'd get a thick ear from his dad, and that was the way it was. And I can think of two occasions when I was younger, and the police made me feel really safe. And the one was, I was waiting for my boyfriend at the time, and the local bobby came up, saw me, and he waited with me till my boyfriend turned up to make sure I was safe. Another occasion, when I was in my early 20s, I'd just gone past the local police station, because we had those in those days, and somebody went into the back of my car. Policeman was there, who was patrolling the high street. He came over, he sorted things out. I went off home, and 2 weeks later, he came knocking on the door to make sure everything had gone smoothly, to sort the accident out with the insurance. You would never, ever in a million years get that happen today. And I think that's a shame, really, because that's what made us feel safe, was seeing the policeman there, the policeman in the uniform, just walking along the streets saying hello, or we knew where the little police stations were if you needed to go there. And you kind of come to today, we've had those 2 horrific cases, but just to throw stats in, last year in 2022, we had 164,000 police officers. In 2022, there were 90 complaints made about police and police staff. Out of those 90, there was 68 found guilty and convicted, and it was sexual assault, violence. And if you take 60 out of 164,000, those are your bad apples. They're very, very rare.
Yeah, I think that is a fair point. Susan, amazing comments. It was worth the wait. I do hope you'll join us again very soon on the People's Hour. My deep thanks as well to Michaela and, of course, Will Geddes, who's back in just a moment. Lots more to come in the programme, including my diary of the week at 9 o'clock and my Take at 10 monologue, plus tomorrow's papers. But next, is it wrong to go on holiday without your kids? See you shortly.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you. GB News will always stay honest, balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind.
And we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance.
Now we're here to represent you. Britain's watching.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Later. Welcome back to the People's Hour with me, Mark Dolan. One final topic to get through. This is a quick question for you. You're in Lanzarote. Cocktail, beaches, a bit of light shopping maybe, and perhaps best of all, no kids. To many of us parents, that sounds like mission impossible, but two mothers with 7 children between them made it happen this week. The only negative was that a 9-hour day trip was all they managed before it was time to head home. But it begs the question, is it okay to go on holiday with your kids? Are holidays more enjoyable without the kids? Robin, I can only imagine that your children are absolutely delightful.
I couldn't think of anything better than being away without them, either of them, to be honest with you, even though they're now grown up. I think I would have left them when I was young as well, if I could have done.
Yeah, you save a fortune, right, not taking the kids.
You save a fortune, but on a serious note, I love those two ladies. What a great thing to do. I'm assuming the kids were well looked after while they were away. My only criticism would be they could have probably gone somewhere a little closer than Lanzarote and spent less time in the air and more time having a few cocktails. But hey, you know what? Fantastic. I love them.
Fantastic. Michaela, have you got kids?
But I do think that parents or single parents should be allowed a break because they have the whole world on their shoulders. They do everything for their kids. They provide, do their washing, wipe their bums, all the usual stuff when they're little. You know, they give everything for most parents anyway, give everything for their children. Absolutely, they should have a break, provided the kids are looked after or are old enough to fend for themselves.
You are a font of wisdom. Fergus, the clock's against us. Child-free holiday. You're going to get some nookie, aren't you?
Well, yeah, but I have to tell a quick story. My brother and I were looked after by friends when I was little. My parents went away. 1 year later, 9 months later, we had a little sister.
Oh, well, there you go. That's what happens when mum and dad are on their own. Who should we go to next, Marky? Adik, what do you think about a child-free holiday?
Good for them. I'm so surprised it's only 9 hours. I would have taken 1 month without.
Yeah. Have you got kids, Adik?
Not that I'm aware of.
No. Well, listen, look at you handsome devil. I'd imagine there's a litter somewhere. Lars!
Well, I'd take my kids with me, but then I like my kids.
Oh.
I spoke to my daughter earlier and asked this question, and she said it's never happening.
And on that rather heartwarming note, what a charmer. Susan, last but not least, my darling, have you got kids? I hope you do, because then they'll be as gorgeous as you are.
Oh, thank you. My kids have got 4 legs, and I do take them on holiday with me. But I look at it from the kids' point of view. My mother and father never not took us on holiday. We always had to go, and I would have loved it for them to go and left me at home with my grandparents where I would have been pampered.
That's exactly what my kids think as well. They can't bear going away with us now. Listen, thank you. Amazing calls tonight. Thank you to my brilliant viewers for their contribution. Will Geddes, what a star. He'll be back soon. An absolute dream Saturday sidekick. Next up, it's Dolan's Diary, my look back at the week. You won't want to miss it.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512,
Virgin Media Channel 604,
Freesat Channel 216,
Freeview Channel 236,
and YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio,
with the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB Plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel. Hi, Andrew Pierce here. Join me every Friday lunchtime for a proper no-nonsense debrief of the week's events. With special guests in the studio and the GB News team on the ground, I'll be getting you up to date with news, some intelligent discussion, and my own sharp take. The weekend starts here with me every Friday lunchtime on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every weekend, it's Mark Dolan Tonight. Bigger and better, starting at 8 p.m. Friday and Saturday.
Can't be too safe.
Bring it on!
Has there ever been a more innuendo feature?
And Sundays, we're on at 9.
It's ridiculous.
Just get on with it. Maybe you should get a proper job.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
It's 9 o'clock and this is Mark Dolan Tonight. Coming up, Dolan's Diary, in which I look back at the week's news, followed by full panel reaction. In the big question, should smacking your child be a criminal offence across the whole of the UK? And in the news agenda with my panel, is it wrong to hold grudges against public figures? This after Matt Hancock was attacked on a train earlier this week. Also, is it ever too late to fall in love? And can you ever shake off a bad nickname? What was your nickname growing up, or indeed into adulthood? Mark at gbnews.uk. After 10, we'll cross live to LA to the queen of US showbiz, royal and political reporting, Kinsey Schofield, for this week's latest Across the Pond. A busy 2 hours to come, including my take at 10 Monologue. The actor Alan Cumming has handed back his OBE because of Britain's colonial past. My reaction at 10, I'm not pulling my punches. So much to get through. Dolan's Diary next, but first the headlines with Ray Addison.
Thanks, Mark. Here's the latest from the GB newsroom.
276 Flybe staff have been made redundant, with the airline going into administration for the second time in 3 years. Around 75,000 holidaymakers have now had their bookings cancelled. Flybe returned to the skies last April after collapsing in 2020. They were operating flights to 17 destinations. The General Secretary of the RMT Union says its members will decide by the 8th of February whether to accept the latest and final pay offer from the rail delivery group. Mick Lynch says discussions will be held with members across the country over the next 10 days, but he told us he doesn't feel optimistic.
What we've got is a really poor offer. The pay offer is below less than half of the rate inflation over these 2 years. Inflation is running over 23% in the retail price index. This is 9% over 2 years, and we had no offer for 3 years before that. So our people are getting poorer, and at the same time their conditions and their working lives are being trampled all over. So I'm quite suspicious about what's going on, and I don't know if our members would be prepared to accept it.
Now, graphic body cam footage has been released in the United States showing police in Memphis beating a black man who died 3 days later. A warning, some people may find the following footage distressing.
Get your hands! Mom! Mom! Hey, get your hands!
29-year-old Tyree Nichols was kicked, punched and pepper sprayed as he cried out for his mother. 5 black officers have been sacked and are now facing murder charges. Tennessee State Representative G.A. Hardaway says we need improved police vetting.
These are folks who we are giving permission at their discretion to take your liberty or your life. We've got to do a better job of deciding who has that authority.
Staying in the US, and former President Donald Trump has relaunched his campaign for re-election in 2024.
They said he's not doing rallies, he's not campaigning. Maybe he's lost that step. I'm more angry now, and I'm more committed now than I ever was, because...
President Trump there speaking at a Republican event in New Hampshire in his first campaign speech. Several party members deciding not to attend, all claiming to have scheduling conflicts. Mr. Trump's next stop will be South Carolina, which is seen as a kingmaker state. We're on TV, online and on DAB+ radio. This is GB News. Back now to Mark Dolan Tonight.
Our very trusted voice of news, Ray Addison, is back in an hour's time. Welcome to Mark Dolan Tonight. In just a moment, it's Dolan's Diary, in which I look back at the week's news, followed by full panel reaction. In the big question, should smacking your child be a criminal offence across the whole of the UK? And after 10, we'll cross live to LA to the Queen of US showbiz, royal and political reporting, Kinsey Schofield, for this week's latest Across the Pond. And in the news agenda, is it wrong to hold grudges against public figures? Is it ever too late to fall in love? And can you ever shake off a bad nickname? Also in my Take at 10 monologue, I'll be dealing with the actor Alan Cumming, who has handed back his OBE because of Britain's colonial past. However, he received the OBE 14 years ago. Why has it taken him this long? I'll be dealing with Alan Cumming at 11. With me throughout the show, reacting to the big stories of the day, my amazing panel of broadcaster and entrepreneur, Ashleen Horgan-Wallace. There she is. She's had a makeover. Do you know what? She got rid of the wig, and I think it suits her. There she is. That's Ashleen. And then her stunt double. Let's go to Tommy Sandu now, who is... oh, bloody hell, folks. We're really phoning it in tonight, aren't we? Who's this? It's like that game, Guess Who? You know, that board game? There he is. We got there in the end. Now, that is Tommy Sandu, writer and presenter. It's like Pass the Parcel, isn't it? Or musical statues. And last but not least, the most gorgeous member of the panel, I'm not going to lie. It's wrong to have a favourite, but with us tonight, journalist and former editor of Labelist. It's been far too long, the great Peter Edwards. Thank you, folks. Can't wait to get your thoughts on my diary in just a moment. So for the next 2 hours, big debates, big guests, and always big opinions. But let's start with my diary. It's time now for Dolan's Diary, my look back at the week's big stories. Nadeem Zahawi, the Tory party chairman, has had a run-in with HMRC over his tax bill. The settlement is rumoured to be in the region of £4 million. Now, I've interviewed Nadeem Zahawi, and he's an absolute gentleman and has won many plaudits for overseeing the vaccine rollout. But how can this accomplished public servant and entrepreneur accidentally fail to pay millions of pounds in tax, particularly given the number of great accountants that are doubtless at his disposal? You and I would be held to ransom if our tax return was wrong by a penny. It doesn't look like a criminal matter, but given that a massive penalty fine was allegedly paid as well, how can it be a completely innocent mistake? Well, time will tell. But why put the Prime Minister through this grief? Why do politicians in trouble cling on like that, causing such ongoing damage to their party? The honourable thing for Zahawi to do is to step down from his position until the matter has been investigated and resolved. If the outcome is favourable, and it could well be, that opens the door to a cabinet comeback. It strikes me that Nadeem Zahawi doesn't just need new accountants, he needs new advisors as well. This sorry affair isn't doing anyone any favours at all. Now, Nicola Sturgeon has bitten off more than she can chew in her zeal to roll out gender ideology in Scotland, which dismisses the very idea of biological sex, that there is a man and a woman. She has, in my view, dug her own political grave. This after news emerges that a male double rapist was being accommodated in a female prison because he now identifies as a woman. This story reflects the problem with eliminating the idea of biological sex. It cancels women and threatens their safety. This mad new Scottish law by which you can identify as another sex by thinking about it for 10 minutes, well, I exaggerate slightly. Well, I think it threatens Nicola Sturgeon too. Some consider Sturgeon's policy to be an important way of making trans people feel included and accepted in society. It's been hailed as a great policy in many quarters. But plenty of Scots were against this law change in the first place. And now it's blowing up in Sturgeon's face. The political damage to the First Minister is huge. By cancelling women, she may just have cancelled herself. A guest on a popular daytime current affairs TV show went viral this week for belittling a caller and her views, saying it's clear from your comments which newspapers you read. Now, the caller, an ordinary member of the public, pushed back and said she didn't read any newspapers at all. But that was not enough for this commentator, who repeated the claim that this woman was simply a victim of the propaganda that she reads in certain newspapers. This commentator later added that the caller was brainwashed by sections of the media, because don't forget, that's how stupid we all are. We just get brainwashed by anything we see or read. This is what the elite do, folks. They accuse you of being brainwashed for having opinions they disagree with. Now, the former social mobility czar, Catherine Birbalsingh, who's been on this show, waded into the row, and she doesn't pull her punches. She said, "This is so appalling. What a way to speak to a caller. This is what ordinary people are sick of, being laughed at by the media classes for having a different point of view." I couldn't have put it better myself. This whole drama reminded me what this programme is all about. A diversity of opinion, and no one getting victimised for their views. The People's Hour, which we've just had from 8 till 9, in which I take your video calls, is an example of just that. On this programme, all opinions are welcome, all opinions are respected, and on my watch, they always will be. And last but not least, a hoax account has tricked media outlets. all around the world with a fake story about the late Aretha Franklin hit, You Make Me Feel Like a Natural Woman. Now, the fake hoax story was that it was offensive to trans people. People were trying to cancel that song, You Make Me Feel Like a Natural Woman. Well, it was a fake, but all too often these crazy headlines turn out to be true. So just to be on the safe side, we've compiled a politically correct list of songs in our special woke playlist. They include People with Cervixes Just Want to Have Fun by Cyndi Lauper. How about this classic from the Bee Gees, More Than a Woman? Quite literally, she's got a penis. This Womb Carrier's on Fire by Alicia Keys. And my personal favourite, a classic from the Beatles, He Loves You, Yeah, Yeah, Yeah. And that was Dolan's diary. I'm in so much trouble. Your reaction to my diary, what caught your eye this week? Mark at gbnews.uk. Delighted to have my panel in the studio reacting to the big stories of the day. And don't forget, we got the papers at 10:20 right through until 11. We have broadcaster and entrepreneur Ashleen Horgan-Wallace, journalist and former editor of Labour List Peter Edwards, and writer and presenter Tommy Sandu. Tommy, what caught your eye this week? Did anything in my diary raise your ire?
Yeah, look, Mark, you're always spot on. I think what we're realising now is. What we were talking, Ashley and I were just talking about it in your lovely little green room area, is that the world's changing. You don't know what you can say, what you can't say now. I loved your album. Of songs just there about politically correct. Because I started thinking about, not so long ago, politically correct football chants, because the stuff that's said in football stadiums is so offensive. And I'm not talking about the really offensive stuff, the racism stuff. I'm talking about even like the banter, the jokes that goes on. So I think, when you think about what you can and what you can't say nowadays, and we were just talking about this earlier on, I was saying, actually, words need to be allowed to be said, even if they're ridiculous, even if they're bonkers, even if someone's coming out there with an out there thought. Because if you don't allow that, then we all just stay in the middle of our lanes, all nice and safe. We don't get to bounce off each other a little bit. We don't get to learn from each other. You don't get to be called out like, what are you talking about, you idiot? You can't say that because this. But if you don't say it, you'll never get there. It's like never going in for a challenge, never going in for a tackle. You're never going to get the ball.
Indeed, Peter Edwards, Labour has been accused in the past of being quite sneering about the views of ordinary Brits. Do you think Keir Starmer is working to correct that?
Yeah, I think he is. Some of that may be unfair, because I think there's sadly a degree of distance between all parties in Westminster and the country at large. But I think certainly under Jeremy Corbyn, there was a bit of a perception, it wasn't totally justified because there's a shadow cabinet, but there was a perception that it was kind of, a would-be government run from Islington, and that's just not credible. I think one of the greatest advantages I had in my career, and I perhaps didn't realise this at the time, was working on regional papers around the UK, particularly in the north of England, and you realise everyone's opinion is valid, whether they've had a university education or not. Yeah. Everyone is contributing to the country, and I think Keir Starmer really gets that. And it's often said he's kind of a North London liberal, but his background is much more complex than that, and he came from a relatively hard-up family.
Indeed. I mean, Peter, what's your reaction to that TV show that aired this week, in which a commentator said to a caller, I can guess what newspapers you read. The caller said, I don't read any newspapers at all. That's a bad attitude, isn't it, to think that someone's been brainwashed because they have views you disagree with?
Yeah, I mean, exactly. I think one has to make sure you remember that just because you disagree with someone doesn't mean they're either stupid or wicked. I mean, personally, I want everyone to buy newspapers because, I love newspapers and had many happy years working on them, and their circulation, whether it's regional or national, is plunging. But I simply don't buy the idea at all that the public are thick and they're dictated by what they read in newspapers. I think, very briefly, if we go on to the panellists, I think the broadcast agenda, particularly the BBC, is very much steered by what's in that morning's newspapers. But I think what newspapers, particularly Sun, do is they echo public opinion and reinforce it, but they don't create it.
Ashleen, great to have you back on the show as well. What's your view?
Well, I just want to know what TV programme it was and who said what. That's
Well, it was
what
it was the Jeremy Vine show this week on Channel 5.
Right, OK. And who was it that was attacking someone?
It was one of his commentators. She actually follows me on Twitter. I'll dig out her name in just a moment. But it's Marina Perkis.
Never heard
Who,
of
by
her.
the way, is a very, very gifted commentator. Very, very... a very good writer. She's compelling. I guess you could call her centre-left. But she's been picked up on her remarks by Catherine Birbalsingh, of all people.
I just think it's really obnoxious to presume that somebody only reads a certain type of newspaper and that their mind is dictated to by what they read. Like, we can form our own opinions, regardless of what we read. And I just think it's really just obnoxious.
Can I add to this, Mark? Because obviously, we host shows, you host shows. When you have a guest on, and when you're in our position, which is on, in front of the cameras, we have broadcasting experience. So if someone's coming on a call, it takes guts to ring up. If ever you've rung up a radio show or rung up a TV show, your heart's going because you're about to go on air, you're about to share an opinion, particularly on a debate show, like a political show like that. And to be slammed like that, and you can actually see in that lady that you're talking about, the one who's on the panel on the show, you can see a little change in her face. If you watch the clip, if any people at home watch the clip, you can see she changed and she's annoyed. She's triggered by the caller. But that's not your job. When you're here, it's not your job to shut anybody else down. No. It's actually to facilitate that debate, facilitate that argument, and to hear out people. And something went a bit nasty in that clip, and it was uncomfortable to watch.
And facilitate a debate we will be doing over the next 2 hours. Thank you to my panel, who are back very, very shortly indeed. We'll be asking about whether it's wrong to hold a grudge with celebrities and public figures if they've made a mistake. Matt Hancock was attacked this week on a train. Obviously, that's completely unacceptable, but do we forgive the guy for perceived mistakes he made? We'll get to that very shortly. We've also got Kinsey Schofield live in the States with some big US stories, including American reaction to Prince Andrew's attempt to make a comeback. Is it on? Is there a way back to public life for the Duke of York? But next in the big question, should smacking your child be a criminal offence across the UK? We'll hear from both sides after this short break.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison? I don't believe in prison. I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on. He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
He's the king of breakfast TV, and he's back. Eamon Holmes, back on the TV
Surprised
with me this morning.
Even remember my name.
I know, it's been 4 months. You have holy water by your bed?
Oh, yes.
Oh,
already to bless.
Yeah. Oh, Eamon. Oh.
Why do you not believe anything I say?
Eamon Holmes back on GB News Breakfast at 6 a.m.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you. GB News will always stay honest, balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind.
And we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance.
Now we're here to represent you. Britain's watching.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Well, a big reaction to my diary of the week. I believe that it's game over for Nicola Sturgeon because of her self-ID trans law. This from Dave, who says, "Hi, Mark, I thought you might have an opinion on the male prisoner who identified as a woman and now identifies as a baby, demanding nappies and a dummy along with his hand held when leaving his cell." This in Scotland. Dave, I am shocked, I'm horrified, and all I would say is welcome to Bonkers Britain 2023. It's time now for this. Yes, it's time for the big question in which we tackle a major news story of the day, and it's coming up to the one-year anniversary of a major change in the law making the smacking of children illegal in Wales, with Scotland having introduced a similar law in 2020. Pressure is now growing from child protection groups to introduce the same law in England. So is it time to toughen the law to protect kids? Or is the right to scold your child with a slap on the wrist or a tap on the bum part of parenting? That's tonight's big question. Should smacking be a criminal offence across the whole of Britain? To debate this, I'm delighted to welcome mother, most importantly, and Deputy Leader of UKIP, a very good friend of the show, Rebecca Jane, and parenting, youth and confidence coach, Kalini Kent. Kalini, great to have you on the show. I believe it's your first appearance on Mark Dolan tonight. You're very welcome. What do you think about smacking? Surely a tap on the wrist wouldn't do any child too much harm.
Well, thank you for having me, Mark. I think that, yes, some parents have got a challenging time, and we recognise that, parenting isn't easy. However, it shows that it's really, so many countries have actually outlawed it already. And I think there are two main points here. First of all, the legality side of it. There are laws against hitting an adult. It's assault. There are laws against harming your pet or hitting them. And so why should children have lesser rights? Every child really needs discipline. They need boundaries. And, it's an essential part of parenting. But there is a big difference between disciplining and physical punishment. And there are other ways of actually getting your child, giving them the guidance and the support they need, and so that their behaviour is appropriate. So I think that's the first main point. And the other thing to bear in mind as well is the psychological and long-term impact on a child. I mean, there's a quote that, when you shout or you hit or you criticise a child, they don't love you less, but they love themselves less. And I think it's really significant that children are looking to their parents, who are their main, carers, or whoever their carer is, to actually learn the behaviours that are appropriate. So if your parent's hitting you or reacting to your behaviour by hitting you, the child will think that violence is an appropriate way to respond to anger or to their bad behaviour. And what will then happen is they're learning that behaviour, that it's okay to hit, and they'll continue that into other areas of their life and other patterns in their life. And, it can also it's been proven, it has a really, really marked impact on them long term into their adulthood, because it's making them maybe feel less worthy of love and affection from their parents, and they're not good enough, and it leads to them having long-term effects into adulthood, and it can be like a trauma for them, depending on the severity, of course. But I do feel that there is a lot to be said for finding other ways of parenting which don't involve physical harm to the child.
Rebecca Jane, you've been giving us some Emily Maitlis-style eye rolls, so you disagree?
Oh, Mark, absolutely, I disagree.
I don't even particularly know where to begin on this. So obviously, if we're saying about the psychological impact on a child, why on earth are we now not all absolutely, out there on the streets having fights every 10 seconds? Because my generation and the generations previous to me were the generations that were grown up with, being given a slap. And we're talking about a slap. We're not talking about hit. I think I heard the word hit used a couple of times. That's a very different process than what we're talking about. We're not talking about abusing children. We're talking about parents having the right to parent their children and not living in this nanny state where we're expecting the government to tell us what we can and we can't do. Because how far do we take that? When the government is stepping in and telling us exactly the amount of discipline that we're allowed to give our children, are they then allowed to start telling us the vaccines that we have to give our children? We are parents. We're very good at our jobs. My children haven't been raised with this notion of, not being able to smack them when appropriate. In actual fact, I think that the youngest one has probably been slightly smacked twice in her whole entire life. She's a fantastically behaved child. She absolutely knows that I love them. And to put everybody into this one net of saying that now they're all of a sudden not going to feel like they're loved and they're going to love themselves less is nonsense. We're parents. Let us parent.
Also, Kalini, I wonder whether a tool in the arsenal of parents is the threat of a robust physical response. So it's not a case of slapping children all the time, but if you do that again, you will get an almighty smack, right? You're actually not planning on doing it. It's just hyperbole. It's an empty threat, but it makes the child think twice. For example, now I can think of an occasion when my eldest son was very small and he ran out into the road and he could have been killed. So I manhandled him. I made it on purpose uncomfortable that I physically manhandled him back onto the pavement and I held him firmly. It can't have been pleasant for him. I didn't slap him, but I was just physical and robust. And I said, if you do that again, you will be in a world of trouble. You could have got hit by one of those cars. Now, my son won't forget that encounter. It's about saving his life. However, if a police officer was present under this law, I could probably wind up in court.
I think there is a bit of there's an element of reasonableness here, and I think that what in response to the opposing discussion, which is I feel that this is fear-based parenting. You're actually exerting a lot of fear on that child by threatening them with the physical punishment. Whereas there are other ways. We have to give our children boundaries, just like we do with adults. People learn what is reasonable behaviour and what the boundaries are. And similarly, we learn that what is acceptable behaviour to another human being. Your child, they need their emotional needs met. They also need to know that they're cared for and loved for. And if the person who loves them the most and who they are looking to for guidance and boundaries and support and to know how they are going to how they should run their life and the values that they're going to live by, bearing in mind that a child's values are actually starting to establish from the age of 2, very well ingrained by the age of 7. So if they are brought up with that feeling of they're going to be physically harmed if they do something wrong, it can set up fears in them and it can be traumatic. And I understand that we're maybe dealing here with this, just the three of us, are people who don't take it that step further. But there are children, where does a small smack go? Where does it stop? Does it become another smack and a harder smack the next time?
Briefly, and Kalini, of course, we'll all agree with that. The idea of violence towards children is truly horrific and abhorrent. And indeed, we have laws to stop that from happening. Isn't that enough? You're not allowed to beat up your children.
Well, you say there are laws, but actually there's the defence of reasonable sort of provocation that you can actually do that to your child. However, it's a test of reasonableness, and at the end of the day, there must be something to be said. Sweden brought out the law in 1979. 6 of 3 other countries have brought that law out to protect children because they have less of a voice.
Okay. Rebecca Jane, final thoughts?
Yeah, you're talking about the test of reasonableness. The actual test is that if you leave a bruise or a mark, then that's when you could be prosecuted. And that's perfectly acceptable, because then we're talking about the grounds of abuse. We're not talking about smacking a child. Those laws are there now. They already exist. We're already governed by them. They are absolutely perfectly fine. They don't need to be changed, because parents should be reasonable enough themselves to know when they're going too far with their parenting, and we shouldn't have to intervene. We have a society of decent and wonderful human beings, and we don't need people like yourself, with all due respect, and the government telling us how to parent our children. I certainly do not have two children that have been brought up with fear and all the rest of the horrifically awful tarnishing names that you're now using. They've been brought up pretty wonderfully, and we should allow parents to be parents.
Kalini Kent, I thoroughly enjoyed your first appearance on the show. I look forward to many more. Parenting, youth and confidence coach Kalini Kent, and the deputy leader of UKIP, and very caring mother, of course, Rebecca Jane. Thank you both. We've been asking you, the great British public, your view. In a Twitter poll, we've asked a simple question: should smacking your child be a criminal offence across the UK? 11% say it should be an offence. 89% say no. The people have spoken. Coming up, we've got the papers at 10:20 with full panel reaction right through until 11 o'clock. But next, after Matt Hancock is attacked on a train and the footballer Sol Campbell asks for a clean slate after leaving Spurs for Arsenal all those years ago. Is it wrong to hold grudges against public figures? We'll discuss that next.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me. So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even some ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, Andrew Pierce here. Join me every Friday lunchtime for a proper no-nonsense debrief of the week's events. With special guests in the studio and the GB News team on the ground, I'll be getting you up to date with news, some intelligent discussion, and my own sharp take. The weekend starts here with me every Friday lunchtime on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every weekend, it's Mark Dolan Tonight. Bigger and better, starting at 8 p.m. Friday and Saturday.
Can't be too safe.
Bring it on!
Has there ever been a more innuendo feature?
And Sundays, we're on at 9.
It's ridiculous.
Just get on with it. Maybe you should get a proper job.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Well, in my diary, I mentioned Nadeem Zahawi, the Tory party chairman, and I pointed out that he'd been successful with the vaccine rollout. Well, Patrick's not having it. Patrick said, Mark, I can't believe you're promulgating the wonderful vaccine rollout mantra. They are toxic, and Zahawi is an absolute... can't actually broadcast that word. Listen, I don't ever cancel anyone, but I'd probably get fired if I said that word. But look, let's just say that Patrick's not a fan. A woman who complained about vaccine adverse reaction, he told her to get her booster. Patrick, not a fan of the vaccine rollout and therefore does not apportion any credit to Nadeem Zahawi for it. There you go. Well, look, keep those opinions coming. Of course, let me stress that the NHS and the medical authorities are very clear that the vaccine is safe and effective. Reacting to the big stories of the day, my all-star panel. We've got Tommy Sandu. We have the wonderful, the fabulous Peter Edwards and Aisling Horgan-Wallace. So there we are, all three. And it is the dream team tonight. Let's get their reaction to this story. This week, a 61-year-old man was charged with assaulting former Health Secretary Matt Hancock after following him onto the London Underground and questioning his policy decisions during the pandemic. Also this week, Sol Campbell, the footballer who chose to leave Tottenham and join their arch rivals Arsenal, has pleaded with fans for a clean slate. Just have a listen to the reception he received on his return to Tottenham in 2001.
I have to sleep very well on the night before.
Now, this is a guy that left Tottenham to join Arsenal 15, 20 years ago, but he has not been forgiven by the Spurs fans. He still feels uncomfortable driving around North London. So, after the Hancock attack and Sol Campbell's plea, it begs the question, is it wrong to hold grudges against public figures? Peter Edwards.
Well, I don't think you've come to me because you think I'm reasonable. I think grudges never help, but it's about how you make your point and where you do it. So, and there is a parallel. I won't talk too much about Matt Hancock. The chap's been charged, so we can't really talk about it in particular. Right. But MPs in the House of Commons, they shout all sorts of mean things at each other, but it's within a certain environment. It's safe, it's public, there's a line which they know they shouldn't cross verbally. Same in football. I don't shout rude things at football matches, but people boo. There's nothing wrong with booing. There are some very nasty things that go on at football matches, as you alluded to earlier, and I've heard foul-mouthed and racist abuse at football matches. I was horrified by it. But booing, to me, is not a big deal at all. The point is when you cross over in someone's private life, and we've seen footballers in Merseyside being accosted in their car this week, which is disgraceful because you don't know who else in the car, and you shouldn't make people feel unsafe, and you shouldn't make politicians feel unsafe on the train either.
And also, what about this idea of forgiving public figures? I mean, for example, I would assume you're something of an admirer of Tony Blair, but he still gets dogs abuse, doesn't he, for the Iraq war? Should we move on in relation to that particular policy? Should the public forgive Tony Blair for that war?
Well, I maybe wouldn't put it quite in those terms because I think, say, if you're a bereaved family, and I know you're someone that's always been very respectful of the contribution of the armed forces, I think if you're a bereaved family, your view of the Iraq war is going to be very different, perhaps from someone like me who's several steps removed from it, has just worked in politics and the media. But Tony Blair, I think, when he was interviewed by The Times, you know, the Times journalist said, well, you can't walk down the street anymore. And he actually rebutted it and said, well, actually, I do. And I'm sure every former high-profile minister or prime minister gets something rude shouted at them. I'd imagine for Tony Blair, for all sorts of reasons, and a sheer length of time in office, it will be more. But although this is quite downbeat, what I'd say is relative to America, where there's been, sadly, violence against politicians regularly, I hope we're not going that way. There have been a handful of horrific episodes in Britain in the last decade. Sir David Amess, Joe Cox. I hope we can get back to a place where there is safety in public discourse. And obviously, and I hate to say this, but guns are not freely available, thank goodness, in Britain. So I have a lot of sympathy for politicians from all parties because there are risks, but I hope we can all dial it down a bit.
It's a problem, isn't it, Aisling, that public figures seem to be fair game for abuse?
It's a sad state of affairs, but the two are not comparable, if you ask me. So Sol Campbell was a footballer, obviously, and he had every right to go to a different team. He chose the better team, obviously, Arsenal. But he had every right to do that. Now, I can understand, you know, there would be a bit of upset within the team, but with politicians, we've got to understand there are so many lives affected. These are people that are running our countries, and people are going to have high opinions, angry opinions, and want to be able to get their point across, because then we're not being listened to.
Yeah.
So obviously what happened to Matt Hancock on the train wasn't right, and the way of him expressing his feelings was wrong, but I understand the frustration. So, you know, you say that it's OK when they're in the House of Commons and they're talking to each other, but what about us, the general public, that want our opinions heard as well? So.
But, I mean, what we've seen is, haven't we, with my colleague here on GB News, Nigel Farage, who has been demonised in some quarters.
He got a milkshake thrown over him, didn't he?
He did indeed,
yeah,
and you know, there are, you know, people somehow think of him as this dreadful figure who was responsible for Brexit. Well, Brexit was a democratic event.
Yep.
And his side won. Now, that doesn't make him a monster, but he's characterised as such in some quarters.
You know, also, yeah, you're right. OK, so when you're a public figure, footballer, presenter, politician, comedian, you're putting yourself out there. And I'm not justifying it, but if we are respecting free speech, then the people have a right to boo, to cheer, to hold up Judas signs, because guess what? Sol going from Spurs to Arsenal means everything to those guys, because they love Sol Campbell. And when he just went to the team next door, that's a stab in the back. That's a Judas moment. I'm not justifying
next door.
And, of course, it was extra egregious because he'd been through the Spurs academy, so he was Tottenham through and through.
Okay, and, you know, it's a big deal, but it means a lot to those guys. So it's hard because every situation is a little bit different, but where I stand, and I'm sure you do as well, Mark, is you can say what you want. You should be able to go to Matt Hancock in public and go, Matt, I think you mishandled it. That was bang out of order, and I'm against this. But it's when you're getting in someone's face, you're swearing. That guy on the tube was telling the TFL woman to shut up, stay out of it.
Yeah, when you're a
it was getting a bit
figure,
nasty,
like you say, you do expect it. I
expect it.
thought I was going to have like eggs and potatoes thrown at me when I left Big Brother for the first time, but it's part and parcel of what we do. You've got to.
What could you make with that? Could you make a nice sort of Spanish omelette?
Tommy, what about this idea of forgiveness, though, as well? So even if it was what might be considered now to have been an error of judgment, like the Iraq War, does there come a point where you forgive Tony Blair? Do we forgive Matt Hancock for any perceived mistakes he made during the pandemic? Why does the public have such a difficulty moving on?
Well, honestly, Mark, I don't think they should. I don't think they have to. You can't make someone forgive you. You can't make someone love you. You can't make someone like you. You can't make someone agree with you. I think Tony Blair made his decision. He's got to justify himself. He hasn't, in my opinion, fully been able to. You know, there's lots of questions around the whole set of affairs. But I think you've got to carry on. I think when we do what we do, and I've gone through my cancel culture, I've been thrown out the BBC, and I had a few messages, not many, people saying, I can't believe this, but things are misunderstood. There's more to every argument. There's details that you don't know about. So when you're on the receiving end of that, it feels horrible, but actually things also move on with time as well. I think you've got to just carry on. And when you're a politician or a public figure, you've got to be thick-skinned for this business, because you can't change people's opinions that quickly.
Well, what do you think? Is it wrong to hold a grudge against public figures who have made a mistake? Let me know your thoughts, Mark, at gbnews.uk. Now, in my take at 10, I'm very excited about this. As actor Alan Cumming hands back his OBE because of Britain's colonial past, 14 years after getting it, we're now living in an era of worthless gesture politics in which people would rather signal their virtue than actually change the world. That's my take at 10 in just a few minutes. But next we go stateside to Kinsey Schofield, the Queen of US showbiz, royal and political reporting. Is the Prince Andrew comeback back on? See you shortly.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle.
Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you. GB News will always stay honest, balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind. And we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you. Britain's watching.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
A big reaction to various conversations that have been sparked in tonight's show. Mark at gbnews.uk. The best bit of the show is when you get in touch. Let's get to your emails. Hi, Mark. Football fans have always been a law unto themselves. They can be beyond cruel and unforgiving, so no surprise there, as Sol Campbell must surely have been aware. Thank you for that, David. How about this? Good evening, Mark. The problem in relation to forgiving public figures is as follows. Those like Hancock and Blair, who you mentioned, are protected. There should be proper investigations into these people, not cover-ups. No wonder people hold grudges. That's from David, the other David. Lots of Davids tonight. I've got a Nicola as well. It's not Nicola Sturgeon, is it? Good evening, Nicola. Nicola says, Dear Mark, if public figures are involved or responsible for the deaths or injuries of people through their lies and coercive behaviour, then they are going to get a rough time and they deserve it. And last but not least on this one, John says, Mark, holding grudges against anyone must be avoided. A heart of unforgiveness is a heavy burden to carry through life. How poetic. Quick word on smacking. Should it be illegal across the whole of the UK? Bob says the following. Good evening, Bob. Thank you for your email. Bob says, my son is now 6'2", 27 years old and bodybuilds. When he was 10 years old, I remember taking him outside a restaurant to give him a slap on the legs for uncharacteristically disobeying me. He remembers it too, the only time it ever occurred, but the threat was sufficient to ensure no repeat. He fully endorses my action. Well, Bob, congratulations on that fine strapping lad of yours. 6'2", 27 years of age, bodybuilder. He sounds like quite an Adonis. Very much a chip off the old block. It's time now for US News with the Queen of US showbiz, royal and political reporting, Kinsey Schofield. Hi, Kinsey.
Mark, it sounds like Prince Andrew and Prince Harry needed their bottoms smacked growing up, because I'm seeing some behavior that leads me to believe there was a lack of discipline with both of the spares.
Yes, the problem is that Prince Andrew would probably enjoy it.
Thank you, sir. May I have another?
Now, can we talk about Prince Andrew? Is the comeback on?
Nope. I mean, Mark, please, he needs to sit down. He needs to stay back. This is getting embarrassing. So it's probably yesterday, today. Ghislaine Maxwell's family releases this photo. They release these dimensions of their bathtub to say that there's no way that Virginia Giuffre and Prince Andrew got in a bath together and had sexy time. The recreation of this photo is cringeworthy, to say the least. But in the midst of this photo being released, then here comes the Mail with a world exclusive. They have proven that the photo of Prince Andrew and Ghislaine Maxwell and Virginia Giuffre, they've proven that this is real. It was printed at a 1-hour photo lab on March 13th, 2001. So, we've heard over the last few days that Prince Andrew's telling friends, I've got something on the horizon that's going to prove my innocence. Just wait and see. It's going to come out next month. Then this bizarre photo of the bathtub appears, thanks to Ghislaine Maxwell's brother. But now you have this proof that this photo exists. It's almost like, just sit down, sit back. This is not a good look for anybody. Please just let your brother get through his coronation. You're embarrassing us.
Let's talk about the coronation. Will Prince Harry be in attendance, do you think?
I think that if he's invited, he'll show up because it's, the closeness to the royal family, that's so important to the Sussex brand. I've seen a recent poll that says a lot of people over there would actually like him there. I mean, I would prefer that he not show up because I believe it's a state occasion and not a family affair, and he's no longer a working royal. But according to a poll recently taken in the UK, people want him there, Mark. I don't know.
Yes, I mean, the issue is how the book has gone down. I mean, the dust has settled, hasn't it, in relation to his book, Spare. Do we know whether it has sold well in America?
I mean, it did take a huge dip. I think it fell like 100 places its second week. Of course, it sold well. It's morbid curiosity. People want the dirt. I think Americans are obsessed with the soap opera element of the British royal family. Americans grew up with the Charles and Diana saga and wanted intel on that specific relationship. So yeah, it was going to sell well, but I don't think that it's a positive reflection on the man.
What's happening with Madonna? At one point, she was the biggest star in the world. Is her career still going?
Yeah, of course she's still a working woman. She's got boyfriends that are younger than pairs of shoes in my closet, Mark. Yeah, she's got the Celebration tour kicking off. Now, the only reason that this is devastating to Madonna fans, I guess, would be because this now has canceled her potential movie that she was creating about her life with Universal. According to sources, Madonna just could not agree with Universal about the script. She wants it dirtier. She wants it grittier. I mean, this is a woman that released a book about sex. So I don't know what Universal was thinking. Probably not going to get that PG-13 rating they were hoping for. So the movie is now on hold. Madonna's going to creatively put all of her energy into the Celebration tour, but we do anticipate that she's still going to create a movie on her life inevitably. I don't know if you watched Ozark, but Julia Gardner was prepared to play Madonna. She's that girl that talks like this on Ozark. I could not wait to see that. Unfortunately, we might not get that in the future. Yeah, so a movie eventually, but right now she's going to focus on her tour.
So I guess the idea of the movie was to replicate the success of films like Bohemian Rhapsody and Rocket Man.
And don't you dare forget Elvis. Don't you dare forget Elvis, starring Austin Butler. I've seen it 175,000 times. And when I get off with you right here, I'm probably going to go watch it again.
Well, I look forward to getting off with you. But listen, let's stay on Madonna if we can. You're such a flirt, Kinsey. Mrs. Dolan's watching. We must be careful. Can I ask you about her status as a star? I mean, is she the biggest female singer in the history of American popular music?
Dolly Parton is offended by that question. Dolly Parton, Whitney Houston, Mariah Carey, Britney Spears. I mean, there are a couple of Lady Gaga. I think she's got some real competition. I think she was a pioneer. I think she was, so creative, sexy, unique. She worked really hard because I don't think she was the most talented girl on the block. I think it was her ambition. It was the way she hustled. It was her contacts. And I do think she just had such a unique look. And she did so many things that people told her she couldn't do. Let's not forget Evita. Don't cry for me, Argentina. Yeah. I mean, oh my gosh, she made the greatest movie about Wallace and Edward that the critics loathe, but I love. So Madonna's done, if you tell Madonna she can't do something, she does it. And of course, that's incredibly empowering and exciting to see.
Yes, Madonna and Kinsey Schofield are very similar. Underestimate them at your peril.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
The queen of US showbiz, royal and political reporting. She's got lots of shoes in her closet, let me tell you. It's the wonderful Kinsey Schofield. Do check out her website, To Die For Daily, which is a dedicated royal website and a must-go-to option for royal fans. Lots more to come. In my take at 10, as actor Alan Cummings hands back his OBE because of Britain's colonial past, 14 years after getting it. We're now living in an era of worthless gesture politics, in which people would rather signal their virtue than actually change the world. That's next.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and tune-in apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Hi, Andrew Pierce here. Join me every Friday lunchtime for a proper no-nonsense debrief of the week's events. With special guests in the studio and the GB News team on the ground, I'll be getting you up to date with news, some intelligent discussion, and my own sharp take. The weekend starts here with me every Friday lunchtime on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every weekend, it's Mark Dolan Tonight. Bigger and better, starting at 8 p.m. Friday and Saturday.
Can't be too safe. Bring it on. Has there ever been a more innuendo feature?
And Sundays, we're on at 9.
It's ridiculous. Just get on with it. Maybe you should get a proper job.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
It's 10 o'clock and this is Mark Dolan Tonight. In my take at 10 in just a moment, as actor Alan Cumming hands back his OBE because of Britain's colonial past, 14 years, by the way, after getting the OBE. We're now living in an era of worthless gesture politics in which people would rather signal their virtue than actually change the world. In the news agenda with my panel, is it ever too late to fall in love? And can you ever shake off a bad nickname? What was your nickname? Mark@gbnews.uk. What is your nickname? Do you like it? Do you loathe it? Plus, a sneaky peek into Sunday's papers 10 minutes earlier than everyone else with the political editor of the Sunday Mirror, Nigel Nelson. That is at 10:20, right through until 11. Tomorrow's papers, lots to get through, including my take at 10 and a rather woke actor. But first, the headlines with Ray Addison.
Thanks, Mark. Here's the latest. 276 Flybe staff have been made redundant after the airline went into administration for the second time in 3 years. Around 75,000 holidaymakers have had their bookings cancelled. Flybe returned to the skies last April after collapsing in 2020. They were operating flights to 17 destinations. The General Secretary of the RMT says its members will decide by the 8th of Feb whether to accept the latest and final pay offer from the rail delivery group. Mick Lynch says discussions will be held with members across the country over the next 10 days. However, he told us he doesn't feel optimistic.
What we've got is a really poor offer. The pay offer is below less than half of the rate of inflation over these 2 years. Inflation is running over 22-23% in the retail price index. This is 9% over 2 years, and we had no offer for 3 years before that. So our people are getting poorer, and at the same time their conditions and their working lives are being trampled all over. So I'm quite suspicious about what's going on, and I don't know if our members would be prepared to accept it.
In international news, body cam footage has been released in the United States showing police in Memphis beating a black man who died 3 days later. A warning, some people may find the following footage distressing.
Get your hands! Mom! Mom! Hey, get your hands!
29-year-old Tyree Nichols was kicked, punched and pepper sprayed as he cried out for his mother. 5 black officers have been sacked and are now facing murder charges. Tennessee State Representative G.A. Hardaway says they must improve police vetting.
These are folks who we are giving permission at their discretion to take your liberty or your life. We've got to do a better job of deciding who has that authority.
Former US President Donald Trump has relaunched his campaign for re-election in 2024.
They said he's not doing rallies, he's not campaigning. Maybe he's lost that step. I'm more angry now and I'm more committed now than I ever was because...
Mr. Trump was speaking at a Republican event in New Hampshire in his first campaign speech. Several party members decided not to attend or claimed to have scheduling conflicts. Mr. Trump's next stop will be South Carolina, which is also seen as a kingmaker state. We're on TV, online and on DAB+ radio. This is GB News, the People's Channel. Back now to Mark Dolan.
My thanks to Ray, who returns in an hour's time. Welcome to Mark Dolan Tonight. Big stories, big guests, and always big opinions. In the news agenda with my panel, is it ever too late to fall in love? And can you ever shake off a bad nickname? Has it served you well? What is your nickname? Mark@gbnews.uk, let me know. Plus, we'll have a look at tomorrow's papers from 10:20. That's 10 minutes earlier than everyone else, 10:20 right through until 11. Tonight in the company of the political editor of the Sunday Mirror, Nigel Nelson. With me throughout the hour, reacting to the big stories of the day and tomorrow's Sunday papers, we have my panel of writer and presenter Tommy Sandu, journalist and former editor of Labour List Peter Edwards, and broadcaster and entrepreneur Aisling Horgan-Wallace. That's all to come, but first, my take at 10. We live in an era of shallow gestures. The highly talented and popular actor Alan Cumming has returned his OBE due to recent conversations he's had about Britain's colonial past and our links to slavery. So what's he been doing for the other 13 and a half years in which he hung on to that title? Alan doesn't know whether he's coming or going. It's hard to imagine this well-read and insightful performer wasn't aware of the British Empire prior to these recent conversations, whose crimes are not limited, of course, to England. Millions accrued by Scottish slave owners helped bankroll the construction of some of Scotland's great cities as well. Now, this actor has a conscience and a big heart and is understandably horrified by our links to slavery, which is, of course, one of the most evil aspects of history, fair enough. But how does it help the world for him to hand back this gong? Refusal in the first place, 14 years ago, would have been more powerful. But to accept it, to sit on it for over a decade and then hand it back is too little, too late. And I believe it's just another example of virtue signalling from a member of the elite. Making yourself look good without actually changing the world. These gestures are everywhere now. People have Ukraine flags on their Twitter bios. What the hell does that achieve? Many people's Facebook and Instagram feeds preach the message of be kind as they pour vitriol on anyone they disagree with. The cervix-free leader of the opposition, Keir Starmer, faced a mixture of admiration and opprobrium from the public when he fell to his knees in the wake of the horrific murder of George Floyd in the United States. Here's the image. Many applauded his actions here as a rejection of the evil of racism, whilst others mocked the sheer opportunism of it and its emptiness as a gesture. It's much easier, of course, to indulge in these gestures than actually make a real difference. Will you hear a squeak from these people about the modern-day slavery that's a bigger trade now than ever, like the thousands of tragic children and teenagers standing knee-height in mud for 12 hours a day, mining for lithium in the Congo to power the electric cars of which our virtue-signalling elites are so keen? For politicians, media figures, leading academics, it seems that a gesture is all it takes. Corporations do the same, of course, with meaningless slogans. How absurd for one particular oil giant to have a rainbow flag of inclusivity in their petrol station, or green messaging as they flog the world polluting fossil fuels. What about millionaire footballers taking the knee in Qatar? Qatar being a hotbed of prejudice and human inequality, and yes, modern-day slavery. And local authorities are at it too, with the bizarre decision to rename the famous Black Boy Lane in Haringey in London. It's called Black Boy Lane, that's its name, which, as the Mail's Robert Hardman points out today in the paper, cost over £100,000 to change the street name and was a decision made by the council without any clear evidence the locals objected to it. Hardman claims in his article that 81% of residents on Black Boy Lane, in fact, rejected the idea of a name change when the council finally got round to asking for their opinions, with no objections from members of the black community. Now, I don't know if those figures are true, and the council are clearly concerned about people being offended by this name, which could upset locals and foment racist sentiment. That's why they've done it. They're not bad people, but I do think they're misguided. It's now called La Rose Lane, but the sign still says formerly Black Boy Lane. So you've got La Rose Lane underneath, formerly Black Boy Lane. So presumably we're still offending people. You couldn't make it up. Will this expensive name change tackle the scourge of racism? You tell me. The twisted genius of wokeism, or extreme political correctness as it's known, is its appropriation of the concept of niceness. If you're woke, you are nice. So it goes. Even though the woke Be Kind brigade are some of the most vicious bullies out there. Illiberal, cruel, and of course the architects of cancel culture. We have replaced real action for change with actual gesture politics. You send a tweet, you pose for a photo, or you send back a royal gong and it's job done. In my view, the only thing that virtue signallers really signal is their shallowness, their vanity, and their eye-watering hypocrisy. Do us all a favour and have a day off. What's your reaction to the decision by the actor Alan Cumming to return his OBE in the context of Britain's history of colonialism and our links to slavery? Mark at gbnews.uk, let me know. Reacting to that and the big stories of the day, including tomorrow's papers in just a few minutes, we have broadcaster and entrepreneur Aisling Horgan-Wallace, journalist and former editor of Labour List Peter Edwards, and writer and presenter Tommy Sandu. Aisling, let me start with you. Your reaction to this actor's decision to send back his OBE after more than a decade?
Well, I agree with everything that you just said. I just think it's very much virtue signalling. I can't say it.
That's because you don't do it, because you're real.
Thank you. Well...
It's not in your vocabulary.
To the core, I'm real. I don't know about anything else. But at my core, I am. And the fact that he did it on his birthday, am I right in that? But, you know, for me, that is just...
It's all about him.
It's just all about him, and it's just a PR stunt. You know, I've worked in this industry long enough to see when everything's transparent to me now, and I can just see straight through that. Because, as you said in your Take at 10, he didn't have a problem 14, 15 years ago when he took it. He, you know, when it was going to further his career and was the right thing for him to do, he didn't have a problem with all of our dubious past. But now, all of a sudden, obviously... we have a dubious past, right? I'm not denying that, but now you've got a problem with it and now you're giving something back on your birthday, but you're not actually doing anything. What are you doing to help? He's just so far removed from normal, everyday people living in Hollywood, and it's just virtual signalling.
Well, Tommy Sandu, he would argue, and he's spoken about this, that he's had recent conversations and he's reflected. You know, we're all on a learning curve, and you know, it's really just become a sort of more immediate concern following engagements he's had about our historic past. We're allowed to change our mind, aren't we?
Absolutely. And I think... I want the focus of this really to be more so why he decided to give it back. Forget the 30... For a moment, forget the 13 or 14 years that he's had... is it the OBE or MBE? OBE he had, right? So... I think he's obviously, right now, that debate about imperialism, about the empire and the effects of it and the information behind it, a lot more detail is coming about. I've read certain books recently, Satnam Sangira's book, which is about empire and the horrific effects that it's had on certain people around the world. I also know, you know, a lot of people who are very proud of what the empire achieved. And it's this little country that's got this global dominance. And that is, in a weird way, something to be proud of. But then what went with that is troubling and upsetting. But those were different times. And I don't believe we should go back in time to cancel things or to take down statues or all those things. So, yes, this is his right. Yes, I think he probably did the right thing by returning it if he felt strongly about it. And yes, we are all on that journey, as you said, Mark. But what does it do? I'll come back to your point about celebrities standing up and making these little virtue signals. I actually do think, I'm going to disagree with you a little bit, Mark, because I think it is the job of celebrity to make these points, to stand up for animal cruelty or whatever the issue might be. It's celebrities that virtue signal, and then that message, through their popularity, goes to the people, and people can then make their own decisions. We haven't got to agree with him, but I think that's his role as an actor and as a person in the public eye to sort of make a stand for his following.
But what is he achieving?
This debate, this conversation. And then someone's going to go, what do you mean the empire's bad? What? It wasn't all great, it wasn't all, you know. But then where do you go? And I'd love to know whether he stops using stamps because it's got the royal family on there, or whether he, you know, where does that line lie? It's a tricky, murky, grey territory, but I think celebrities and people in the public eye have a duty to raise issues, and they have a platform to raise issues, which is what he's done.
Well, he should be raising issues that are going on in America, which is his new home, with the police, for example.
Yeah.
Present-day issues, not past history that, you know, we can't change, unfortunately.
Yes, I mean, Peter Edwards, Aisling, I imagine, would argue that perhaps these interventions would be noble if the motivations were noble. But her argument is a lot of these celebrities are really just trying to make themselves look good and boost their career.
I think it comes from the right place. I think his motivations are good, but it's not the choice I'd make. There's rightly a huge and ferocious debate about the impact of the British Empire, and obviously that debate will never end. We're all going to find the right place for us on that debate. But I wouldn't have made the choice because, one, 14 years ago, all the evils of the British Empire were known then. There hasn't been a new discovery that was hidden from Alan Cumming. Two, he lives in America, right, which has just as bloodthirsty a history in terms of slavery. And I read a lot of the slave narratives when I was in English literature undergraduate 20 years ago, and they're testaments to a horrific point in American history. And thirdly, it's rude. He was given an honour by the royal family, and then he gave it back. And he gave it back in a really public way, and it's just rude.
Wasn't very British of him.
So I do understand his motivations, but there's no way in the world I would have gone about it this way.
Your reaction, Mark at gbnews.uk. What do you think about public figures speaking out on political issues and doing gestures? Am I being too hard on them? Let me know. Mark at gbnews.uk. Next up, we've got the papers in the company of the Sunday Mirror's political editor, Nigel Nelson. Don't go anywhere.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit off.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions are, those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on. He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
He's the king of breakfast TV, and he's back.
Eamon Holmes, back on the TV with me this morning.
Even remember my name.
I know, it's been 4 months. Do you have holy water by your bed?
Oh, yes.
Oh,
already to bless.
Yeah. Oh, Eamon. Oh.
Why do you not believe anything I say?
Eamon Holmes back on GB News Breakfast at 6 a.m.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you. GB News will always stay honest, balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind, and we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you. Britain's watching.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
and right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB+ radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mark Dolan tonight on a Saturday is all about Sunday's papers, and therefore we bring you a sneak preview of two of the headlines right now, 10 minutes earlier than everyone else, and all the papers at bang on 10:30. But let's have a look at what we've got so far. And let's have a look at the Sunday Mirror. We're about to speak to their political editor, Nigel Nelson. They lead with the following. Let's take a look. Conservative cash scandal. Top Tories Russian oil millions. Sunak and Zahawi made donor party treasurer. Billionaire still trading through Putin's war. The Tories' top treasurer has been raking it in from a firm still dealing with warmonger Vladimir Putin's Russia. Billionaire Mohammed Mansour co-owns UK-based Unitrack and a subsidiary supplying machinery to Russia's oil and gas industry. Unitrack has donated £600,000 to the Conservatives, and Mr Mansour is said to have pledged $2 million to the Tories himself. He was appointed senior treasurer last month by PM Rishi Sunak and Tax Row Party chairman Nadeem Zahawi. Let's have a look now at the Sunday Telegraph. Hospitals at home plan to save the NHS. More than 500,000 patients a year will be treated in hospitals at home in an attempt to relieve pressure on A&E departments. Under the plans, elderly and frail patients who fall will be treated by video link, with ministers saying today that a fifth of emergency admissions could be avoided with the right care. Health officials said the virtual wards would be backed up by £14 billion in extra spending on health and care services over the next 2 years as the NHS tackles record backlogs with 7 million people on waiting lists. Also, Sturgeon under fire as second trans inmate sent to women's jail. And hypocritical Starmer benefited from private school charities. So Keir Starmer personally benefited from a private schools charity. The Telegraph can disclose the Labour leader, who has vowed to remove the charitable status of independent schools, received a bursary to fund his sixth form studies at the fee-paying Reigate Grammar School. Well, those are two of your front pages. Fascinating story on the front page of the Sunday Mirror. Their political editor is the longest-serving political editor in the country. It's Nigel Nelson. He joins us now. Hi, Nigel.
How are you, Mark?
I'm very well. Congratulations on a scoop for the Sunday Mirror. Top Tories Russian oil millions. Tell me more.
Well, I can't take credit for this one. It's my colleague Mikey Smith who did this story. But this is the Tory treasurer Mohammed Mansour, and broadly, as you've explained, that he's been making a mint out of a business that has been selling machinery to Russia to their oil and gas industry. Now, there's no suggestion that sanctions were broken here, that what happened was that the company has been fulfilling contracts that existed before the war in Ukraine started, and they've been trying to run down their operation. However, it's not a very good look to actually be dealing with Russia at a time like this, when Rishi Sunak himself has been saying that British companies shouldn't actually trade with Russia. What I think is always incredible about these things is that to become Tory treasurer, it seems you've got to basically pay for it. You've got to give lots of money to the Tories. So his company has already given £600,000, and he's apparently pledged another couple of million.
The Tories dogged by allegations of sleaze, but in a cost of living crisis, does anyone care?
I think they care even more in a cost of living crisis than other times. I mean, the whole point about what people want is for everyone to play fair and everyone to obey the rules. So an awful lot of people pay their taxes without complaint, well, without much complaint anyway, and they pay them on time, and they get pretty angry when they see someone like Nadeem Zahawi, the Tory chairman, not paying his tax or paying it late and incurring a penalty because of that. It doesn't go down awfully well when the Deputy Prime Minister is being accused of multiple counts of bullying. So Rishi Sunak came into to number 10, and he promised that there would be integrity, professionalism, and accountability. They were his words within the party under his leadership. And with all that's going on, with Boris Johnson's rather odd loan, £800,000 loan, with 6 Tory MPs who've been under suspension since the last general election, it doesn't look like Rishi Sunak is fulfilling that promise.
What about Keir Starmer, front page of the Sunday Telegraph? Hypocritical Starmer benefited from private school charity. He attended a school which became, I think it was a grammar school, it became fee-paying. And it was a charity that paid certainly for his 6th form studies. So he's benefited from private school. Is he therefore wrong to be relieving them of their tax-free charitable status? Is that double standards?
Well, I don't think so, because I mean the whole situation about politics is that what you do is you do things for the benefit of people. It can't be about what you've done earlier on in your life. You're talking about what is actually best for the British people. Okay. And the point that Keir Starmer is making is that why should us, the taxpayer, subsidise people for making a choice of where they send their children to school? I'm not against private education. That's fine. What I am against is my taxes going towards subsidising it, which is why charitable status should be removed.
Nigel Nelson, it looks like a cracking paper tomorrow, the Sunday Mirror. Do check it out. Nigel Nelson is the political editor of both the Sunday Mirror and the Sunday People. Nigel, thanks very much. Look forward to welcoming you back to the studio presently. We'll get more papers with full panel reaction after this. Don't go anywhere.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me. So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, Andrew Pierce here. Join me every Friday lunchtime for a proper no-nonsense debrief of the week's events. With special guests in the studio and the GB News team on the ground, I'll be getting you up to date with news, some intelligent discussion, and my own sharp take. The weekend starts here with me every Friday lunchtime on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every weekend, it's Mark Dolan Tonight. Bigger and better, starting at 8 p.m. Friday and Saturday.
Can't be too safe. Bring it on. Has there ever been a more innuendo feature?
And Sundays, we're on at 9.
It's ridiculous. Just get on with it. Maybe you should get a proper job.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Welcome back to Mark Dolan tonight. It's exactly 10:30, so it's time for tomorrow's papers. And it's Sunday papers with full panel reaction. Let's start with the Sunday Express. Now, they lead with the following, quite a headline. Rishi at war over migrants. Angry civil servants vowed to scupper PM's plan to tackle the asylum crisis. Senior officials claim the PM wants to tear up the rulebook in a bid to end the tide of people crossing the channel in small boats. He's driving ahead with new laws that would completely remove the right to asylum here for all illegal entrants. But furious Whitehall insiders have vowed to torpedo the plan. Also, Princess of Wales on why she's excited to help give children a better start in life. The Observer next, brilliant. I saw children face bullying and racism at asylum hotel. Whistleblower adds to the Home Office pressure. And you will be hurled from the window, migrants told. Just anecdotes there about horrific abuse of migrants, asylum seekers at an asylum hotel here in the UK. Sunak was warned about Zahawi tax risk, is the other story in The Observer. OK, let's go to The Independent now. US protests police brutality. Demonstrators expressed their fury after the death of Tyre Nichols, who is 29, following a violent arrest by officers. Probation crisis. Victim killed every 3 days by offenders on watch list. A person is killed every 3 days on average by an offender on probation in England and Wales. Figures published by HM Inspectorate of Probation show that 622 reviews were triggered after alleged murders by reoffenders over 6 years to 2022. Absolutely shocking state there of the criminal justice system in this country. OK, let's have a look at The Star now for a bit of much-needed light relief on this cold January evening. Can you believe it's now the 28th of January? Where did that go? The Daily Star Sunday, a pain in the bum. Dumping donut on its way. Britain faces blast from North Pole. Never mind the beast from the east or the troll from Trondheim, Britain is going to be hit by a new weather phenomenon, Homer's Donuts. That's right, folks. Get your sweaters out because we're about to have a cold snap. Let's have a look at the Sunday Telegraph now. Hypocritical Starmer benefited from private school charity. Keir Starmer personally benefited from a private school charity, according to the Sunday Telegraph. The Labour leader, who's vowed to remove the charitable status of private schools, received a bursary to fund his sixth form studies at the fee-paying Reigate Grammar School. Sturgeon under fire as second trans inmate sent to women's jail, and hospitals at home plan to save the NHS. Let me give you a little more detail on this. I touched on it earlier with Nigel Nelson. More than 500,000 patients a year will be treated in hospitals at home in order to help A&E. Under the plans, elderly and frail patients will be seen by video link, with ministers saying that a fifth of emergency admissions could be avoided with the right care. This is all part of 14 billion quid extra over the next 2 years to tackle that backlog. Plans for an expansion in community response teams will mean more elderly patients can be assessed and treated on the spot instead of being brought to hospital under a scheme that will aim to provide a response within 2 hours. Trials that sent out a paramedic and community nurse to examine patients who suffered a fall found they could halve the proportion being taken to A&E, with some schemes using video links so that ambulances could liaise with hospital consultants from a patient's home. Virtual wards, I'll be asking my panel about that shortly. And last but not least, the Sunday Mirror, top Tories Russian oil millions. The Conservatives' top treasurer has been raking it in from a firm still dealing with warmonger Vladimir Putin's Russia. Billionaire Mohammed Mansour co-owns Unitrak and subsidiary supplying machinery to Russia's oil and gas industry. He's donated 600 grand to the Tories and pledged 2 million on a personal level. And he's the treasurer. How did that happen? And those are your front pages. Let's get reaction now from my good friends, my panel tonight. Tommy Sandu, Peter Edwards and Aisling Horgan-Wallace. And let's have a look at this. I'm very interested in this story, Peter Edwards, in relation to the NHS. Hospitals at home plan to save the NHS. We're going to have to think outside the box if we're going to tackle our health services problems, aren't we?
Yeah, I think there may well be a role for virtual wards. I think all the parties have heard the lesson now, simply offering more money for the NHS however well-intentioned, is not something that sways voters. It needs reform. But it's kind of a pragmatic response, but maybe also it's a sign of failure because it shows we're considering virtual wards because hospitals are already bursting at the seams and don't have enough money. So clearly, yeah, it's a pragmatic, intelligent response to the situation we find ourselves in. And personally, I've had a number of friends in the last year who've been very ill and passed away, and more than one said, you know, they preferred being at home when you are facing a critical illness. So there is a kind of taking all the ideology out of it. There's a benefit for patients in being around your loved ones in your own environment.
Yeah.
But we're doing this because hospitals can't cope.
Yeah, well, that is, of course, the issue, and that's a long-term problem. But, Aisling, how do you feel about being seen by video link, or perhaps an older relative, if they fall down the stairs, they've got to get their iPhone out?
Yeah, and that's my only problem. I personally wouldn't mind, and I actually think it's a really good idea because, as you say, we're bursting at the seams. What else can we do? But for the older generation that don't know how to use that, I mean, if it was down to my nan to have a FaceTime consultation, she'd be struggling. It would be a real problem.
Is this the idea that in this trial that they've had paramedics and a nurse, a clinician, going to the property?
That's good.
And then they set up the video call with the consultant.
Oh.
And I think it's one of the ideas.
Well,
So I
that
don't think
seems
they're
to be-
expecting Granny to find an iPad and get it plugged in and
Yeah.
get it online and all the rest of it. But I mean, I find this story quite refreshing, to be honest.
I think it is. I think that something needs to be done, and I think it's a way forward.
Can I just add? Sorry, Mark. Brown people, Indians, we've had doctors at home all our lives. We've got most of my family are doctors. Most of my friends, the school parents are doctors. So actually, when I heard this, I was like, oh, we've been doing that for years. And basically what happens when you're Indian and you have a network of doctors, and we do, and what you do is you ring them and you'll go, like I've got, my cousin's married to a doctor, so you ring her first and you'll go, the kids have got this spot. And she goes, send me a picture. She goes, no, it's not chickenpox. So you get that little bit of referral. So actually, I can say on behalf of the British people, brown people, we've trialled it. It works. Give it a go. But what you need is more doctors in your family and friends.
Why aren't you a doctor, by the way?
Well, you know, I might be, Mark. I might be in a parallel world.
Doctor of laughter.
Exactly. You'd be like Patch Adams, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Laughter is the best medicine.
It is.
There you go.
My mum is still hoping I might turn into a doctor. She's like, come on, son, please, be a doctor.
Well, listen, you can examine me after the show. Let's see how it goes.
Again?
Yeah, you'll have to get a drink in me first. But I mean, the issue is potentially, Tommy, the slippery slope to video consultations. We know how many people's symptoms were ignored in the course of the pandemic because they could only get a video GP appointment.
Yeah, but then again, through the pandemic, I had physio through a appointment. It's all right. I mean, look,
how do you get physio on a video?
Exactly. I was looking forward to a good massage. It was through a link.
How
so
did they get?
I had to rub myself.
Is that what
I yeah. Actually, no, that's true. That was a different video link. That was a different video link. That was sorry, no, that was the other one. I think it's a nice way of eliminating some of the cases that don't need to get to the doctor. So if there's a way, and sometimes I've been there. I've taken my little one in because he's had a temperature for 2-3 days. You're a bit concerned. You're like, he's not actually shaking it off, and the doctor will go, it's going around, and we're out in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And I'm like, we didn't need to do that. So if that can be done in another way, in using technology, then I'm all for it.
Well, I'm really glad that Babe Station almost saved your life. You won't be the only one. No. Peter swears by it. I mean, Aisling, this is the state of our NHS. Some people will see this as death by 1,000 cuts.
I mean, I could, he said, I forgot his name.
This bloke.
Sorry.
By the way, you know what we're going to do? We're going to have nicknames.
Name badges.
Later.
Oh, nicknames.
Oh, yeah, nicknames.
We're talking nicknames. So shall we give Peter a nickname so you can remember? What? Perfect Pete?
No, I've
Peter
got
Baby.
No, well, he had it.
Baby. PB.
I think I should have a say this, right?
No, you don't get to say. That's how nickname. But he's having a cheese sandwich outside and a lovely seeded
Cheesy Pete.
So no, I'm going to go with Pete Breadwoods.
Oh, Peter Breadwoods.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I also quite like Cheesy Pete. So why don't we go for CP?
Yeah.
No, let's not do that. Of the many jobs I had in university holidays, the one I enjoyed most, I think, was being a postman. And when I went back to university, I was called...
Postman Pat.
Of course you were.
I wasn't called Postman Pat, come on, think it through. Postman Pete.
That's quite nice. Oh, we might stick with that, though. We'll call you Posty.
Did you have a black and white cat? That's all I want to know.
No, I just had a bicycle, but that was adequate.
Did anything unusual or surprising happen to you when you were on your deliveries?
No, I was not propositioned by any wives. Is that what you're suggesting?
That's disappointing.
He wasn't on my round.
Did you get accosted by any dogs or anything like that?
Oh, many times, yeah, and that was a learning curve, definitely.
Yeah. Our posties do a great job, don't they? They're very underappreciated.
Love posties.
Back on topic. That's the NHS. I just wonder whether is it death by 1,000 cuts is the only concern, because fundamentally, right, we've got a human right, haven't we, in this country, to go into A&E if it's an emergency, and I just worry that if we agree to this, the authorities will say, oh, wait a minute, no, you're going to be on video link. You can't come in here.
I think there's not much alternative avenues to go down. I think that this has to be done and has to be put in place because people do go to A&E, sometimes unnecessarily. I don't mean to be rude, but,
They might not know, though. They might not know.
Obviously, they might not know, but then there are other people that sometimes just do. So I think this is a good thing and it's the way forward. We have to move forward with the times, and this is what we've got to do.
Speaking of moving forward, Ashley, in the Sunday Express, Rishi at war over migrants. Angry civil servants vow to scupper PM's plan to tackle the asylum crisis. The Prime Minister wants to drive ahead with new laws that would completely remove the right to asylum here in the UK if you've entered the country illegally. So you get here illegally, you will not get asylum. So we're told, at least by the Express, that the blob, the civil service, aren't having it. What's your view?
I think he's damned if he does and damned if he doesn't. That was a tongue twister. I think he's probably right. I mean, I understand that people are coming from terrible situations, but then a lot of people aren't as well. So, and something has to be done. So what are the alternatives? Just sort of let everyone in and then we've got another crisis then.
This is a challenge for Keir Starmer, isn't it? Because I know that Labour objected to the Rwanda plan, but he needs to engage with some of Sunak's policies. Otherwise, Sunak will accuse him of being soft on illegal immigration.
Well, that's a fair kind of question politically. I think it's a bigger problem for Rishi Sunak because this is not doing something about it. This is a pledge to possibly do something about it in future. And it's actually, I think, solicitors and barristers that are going to be at the vanguard of resisting this rather than the civil service. And I know the Express was splashed on the civil service. But, sometimes you read a story in about 10 seconds think this is going to be aimed at a legal challenge. This is it, surely. This is nothing to do with the EU or Brexit. The right to asylum, as I understand it, is a global right, I think, that flows from the UN. I'd be amazed if this ends up on a statute book. So if you pursue something where there's such a question mark over it on day one, again, a bit like Rwanda, it's about sending a message to your electoral base about toughness.
And that is important. What's Starmer's answer going to be on that? Because he does need to address the issue, doesn't he? He can't keep saying, I'll do a deal with France, because I don't think the public believe that will happen.
I think that's a reasonable argument to pursue. I think you're right that Labour have talked more about the process, but it's very interesting because about a year ago, Labour were kind of first out to say we need much closer cooperation with France, and that was kind of poo-pooed at the time, and journalists challenged it, as is their job. But then about 6 months after that, the Conservative-run Home Office said we need closer cooperation with France. So actually, the idea of being kind of pragmatic and non-ideological and talking to your neighbours is a good thing.
And, of course, the Tories have done some deals with the French authorities in recent months, proving your point.
Yeah, so that's politically... But that presents a challenge for Labour because you have to pivot from saying useless Tories to claiming it as a Labour success.
Tommy, will this be a key issue at the next election alongside the economy and the NHS?
Oh, of course it will. The migrant issue, illegal immigrants, asylum seeking, and what's going on our borders is... It's the hot. I think it's probably the hottest topic right now in terms of an issue with this country. Mind you, say that as I'm saying that out loud. I'm thinking about the NHS. I'm thinking about all the people that are striking. I'm thinking about mortgage rates. So, but this is... It's up there. Yeah, it's up there because it's a kind of externally influenced issue. So it's an issue that's coming from people abroad. The other issues that we've got are our own internal issues and the way in which we're running systems or parts of this country. But this, we're being... I think a lot of Brits feel imposed upon. It's hurting us at a time when we're vulnerable and sensitive anyway. So yes, hot topic. And I also know that these kind of issues are so layered. I mean, how you go about this has to be treated very sensitively with respect for, like you said, UN rules, but also with respect for the people, because there are some people genuinely seeking help, and we should help, but there are others that are taking advantage of it.
A delicate balancing act. I'll get to your email shortly. What's your view on that? Mark at gbnews.uk. Coming up, lots more stories from the papers, including nicknames, by the way. Can you shake off a dodgy nickname? Is giving people nicknames charming? Is it friendly, or is it offensive? Plus, cold weather on the way. More on that next.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512,
Virgin Media Channel 604,
Freesat Channel 216,
Freeview Channel 236,
and YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio,
with the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness, brilliant. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and tune-in apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Hi, Andrew Pierce here. Join me every Friday lunchtime for a proper no-nonsense debrief of the week's events. With special guests in the studio and the GB News team on the ground, I'll be getting you up to date with news, some intelligent discussion, and my own sharp take. The weekend starts here with me every Friday lunchtime on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every weekend, it's Mark Dolan Tonight. Bigger and better, starting at 8 p.m. Friday and Saturday.
Can't be too safe.
Bring it on.
Has there ever been a more innuendo feature?
And Sundays, we're on at 9.
It's ridiculous.
Just get on with it.
Maybe you should get a proper job.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store? You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome back to the show. We are reacting to the papers in the company of Ashleen Horgan-Wallace, Peter Edwards and Tommy Sandu. 3 fabulous intellectual giants who are, of course...
They're on tomorrow.
Well, exactly. They weren't available. Let's have a look at the Daily Star Sunday. We're in Britain. This is GB News. We're going to talk about the weather, and I make no apologies for that. A pain in the bun is the headline in the Daily Star. Holly, grab it if you can for us. Dumping donut is on its way. Britain faces a blast from the North Pole. The Star have mocked up a massive donut, and there it is. Never mind the beast from the east or the troll from Trondheim. Britain is going to be hit by a new weather phenomenon, Homer's donut. We can laugh about it, Peter Edwards, but it's going to get cold, and that's a problem. First of all, we're already deciding, in many cases, whether to eat or heat. Energy bills through the roof. It's a big headache for the government. big headache for households.
Yeah, although this is an incredibly jokey portrayal with Homer Simpson on, and I should say a bun is not a donut, they're different things, but there's going to be real...
See, I told you, he knows his bread, he knows his dough. He knows his dough, man.
Were you a baker as well as a postman?
I do quite a bit of home baking. I have to bring something to the studio sometime. Low sugar brownies. Anyway, I think the cold snap.
He looked at me when he said low sugar brownies. I'm just saying. He looked at me.
We're all slim folk.
Yeah, exactly. I'm a low sugar brownie. Right. So.
You're putting words in my mouth.
Well, I'd love to get my hands on your brownies, but that's for another day.
On that bombshell, yeah. I think, as you mentioned, jokey headline, but actually there's going to be misery at the heart of this because already for some folk it is a choice between heating or eating. We know there is a government subsidy. It's relatively limited in scope for the poorest households in terms of energy bills, but I think it's very cold already. We've probably, because we've had so many swings, we've maybe got used to milder autumns. It's ordinary January weather is very cold. And, I think especially for an older person on low income, person living alone, I think it's going to cause a lot of worry.
Big time. We've kept the heat down at home, and the only satisfactory solution for me to be comfortable is to keep my puffer jacket on indoors. Is that a faux pas?
Well,
having a puffer jacket on?
Yeah. My missus doesn't
on your
like
body.
it. She's like, you look like you're about to leave. And I'm like, good, you're not complacent.
Yeah, exactly. She's ready for you. Any moment now, you can go, Mark.
Correct.
Keep
but
her
I'm
on
not
her
even
toes.
joking. I'm only really comfortable in my coat.
Yeah.
But that's not a good look for indoors, is it?
Well, I remember when I was growing up, a single-parent family, we did have high ceilings as well where I lived, so it was a real problem, heat in the house.
And old-fashioned windows.
Old-fashioned windows, no double glazing, and we used to, me and my mum used to walk around in our coats. They weren't puffer jacket, we couldn't afford those, darling.
Yeah, well, that's it.
But we used to walk around and we used to just contain ourselves in 1 or 2 rooms, and I think that's the best advice that I could give to
Tommy, how do you stay warm?
Yeah, funny, just over Christmas, just after Christmas, for about 2 weeks, because it took ages, my boiler went down for the heating.
Don't talk about your wife like that. That's hard.
And I went, "Oi, get back here!" And she came back. The boiler went, and then you realise how cold the house.
Correct.
But one good tip.
And so we had to close doors.
One good tip is actually, if you can't afford to put the heating on, is actually a heated blanket. Just stay in your bed with a heated blanket because it's relatively cheaper. Well, a lot
localised heat, essentially.
Exactly that. So
yeah, that's a pretty smart move. Let's talk about love, because a 46-year-old woman wrote to the Telegraph's Midults column this week, sharing the fact that she's never been in love. That's right, at the tender age of 46. Now, despite being in a few relationships and turning down a proposal in her early 30s, the young woman is yet to find love and is starting to give up hope. So it begs the question, is it ever too late to fall in love? What do you think?
Absolutely not.
Aisling?
Sorry, I just stole
Straight
it.
in there.
Absolutely not. I'm newly single.
If it hasn't happened by 46, it ain't going to happen, is it?
I'm 44. And
yeah, but you've been in love
a
few times, right?
I mean, they have all the time. I'm not so sure, but I'm recently single, and I was explaining to my dad on the phone because he liked this particular gentleman, and he was like, "Well, what's the problem?" I just said, "He's just not for me, Dad. Just trust me on this. He's not for me." "Oh, well, you're 44. What are you going to do? Be an old spinster?" Like, it's just a perception that you have to be settled down and you have to find love and you have to be with someone before you're a certain age, otherwise you're put on the shelf. Especially for women, it really angers me, and it's not true. I know women that have found love literally in their late 50s, 60s, and
But if you haven't been in love at least for one moment up until the age of 46, something's not right, is it?
What is love? I mean...
Oh, there you go.
Friendship. I find love in friendship and family.
To the boiler, then. Tell me about your love life.
So, OK, lots to say on this one. The story actually says she's never fallen in love. It's not that others haven't fallen in love with her.
Yeah.
So she turned people down.
That's what I'm thinking.
Now, you know, I've grown up in the world of Bollywood love stories and Hollywood love stories, so love is around all the time. Love songs are all the time. In fact, it's our chosen playlist at home is love songs, you know, particularly tomorrow. On a Sunday, we'll wake up to love songs. Love it all. But...
TMI.
Yeah, no, it's not. No,
Barry White?
I'll send you the video. That's TMI. But I think people have a preconception of what they think love should be, what they think a relationship should be, what a loving relationship should be, and it's when you set the bar too high, you're never going to achieve it. Actually, real love is sometimes sharing a cheese sandwich.
I love my dogs. I'm literally in love with my dogs. That's
that
love
would do it.
for me.
A lot cheaper than a husband. Let's finish
Or
on
obedient.
this. The Hollywood star And Oscar nominee Margot Robbie cannot shift her nickname of Maggot. She was on the red carpet and a mate from school came up to her and said, "Hello, Maggot," because when she was younger, Margot looked a bit like Maggot. So the question is, can you ever shake off a dodgy nickname? Are nicknames offensive or is it top banter? What do you think, Peter? Cheesy Pete.
I think it depends on the name. I had Eddie at primary school. I had Pedro at university. I was quite happy about.
Pedro's quite strong, yeah. It makes you sound a little Latin and rather sort of glamorous, really.
Yeah. When in fact,
hairy chest, medallion.
Yeah.
Well, I'm the most English person there is. I think a Times reading, tea drinking Britain.
I think Pedro might stick. Actually, I quite like that.
Yeah,
I mean, the thing about it is, it's a way of people saying they like you, isn't it?
I think it's nice. It's endearing, especially if it's from your past. It's an endearing moment because it's someone that's remembered you from childhood. My dad's nickname was Wally because his surname's Wallace, and you can't really call him that unless you know him now.
No.
It's not the best, but it's endearing. You know, they've known you for years. It's cute.
Have you been given a nickname at all that's broadcastable?
Just Queen.
Well, that will do. That's just descriptive. That's not a nickname.
No, I haven't. Ash.
We love it.
That's it.
There's some good ones I've heard over the years because there's lots of these that kick around on TikTok. By the way, there was a guy whose surname is One Frey, so his nickname was Buy One. Buy one, get one free, which is great. There's a football coach who always said to the team, "Don't let me down." His name was Balloon.
Oh, come on. And on that note, how do you follow that? Let me tell you, we're back tomorrow. Anne Widdecombe's on the show and Anuncia Nata Rees-Mogg. But Headliners is next. I'll see you tomorrow at 9.
Join me, Camilla Thompson.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView